This meeting is being recorded.
All right, Melody, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, April 4th, 2022 Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board. I see we have a quorum, so we are ready to get going. The posted meeting agenda has been reviewed. I don't know of any changes. Jim, do you have any changes that you're
No.
aware of?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. You've all received Jim's meeting notes. Have you had a chance to review them?
Yes, they're
Comprehensive.
excellent. I move that we accept them.
Thank you, Edna. Could I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. You've all had a chance, I hope, to review the March 21st minutes. Thank you, Gretchen, for getting them out again. Any corrections, additions? Hearing none, could I have a,
Accept them.
thank you, Edna, second, please.
Second, Joe.
Sean.
Thank you, Joe and Sean. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. I don't have any correspondence. I don't believe we will later speak about some submittals we've had, some public comments. That's not the correspondence I'm talking about here. Jim and I do have a couple of announcements, and I'll turn it over to Jim to talk about some things coming up in a couple of future meetings that we want to make you aware of.
Great.
Go ahead,
Thanks,
Jim.
Melody. So as everyone knows, there's a lot going on in town right now. We have incredibly busy meetings, every single meeting every month. And we have a lot of big projects on our plate right now. One of the things that is coming up that we do need to start getting into are our seeker reviews for some of those larger projects. And for the type 1 projects that we have, we actually need to go through and do a detailed review of the type 1, the seeker documents for a type 1 review. As a result, we have discussed and we're going to hold, based on some coordination with the planning board attorney, and the fact that this will take some time, we are going to go through and do an April 18th meeting in place of a lot of the new potential projects that would come in. We're going to actually do a seeker overview for probably 30 to 45 minutes, looking at the part 2 of the seeker document, what it contains and what it is the planning board will need to do, and have a discussion about how that relates, in this case, specifically to Grassmere and the Red Wing projects that are before the board currently. So that will be part 1, part 1 discussion that we will have on the 18th, and spend a good chunk of time at that meeting discussing those. The following month, on May 2nd, we are actually going to spend what we would be using as time for new projects to actually go through those part 2 documents for seeker and have the planning board go through them line by line, item by item, discussing every part of the part 2s as it relates to each of the projects, again, being Red Wing and Grassmere, and then coming to a decision at the end about how each of these projects do or do not meet the seeker classifications and items in those part 2 documents. So we do plan on spending a significant amount of time in the April and May meetings on going through these. It's an important part of the review process for these type 1 projects. And we believe that these 2 are at the point that we need to go through and do that. There will be others coming. As you know, we have a few other type 1 projects out there, but those are the 2 on our plate for right now. Any quick questions about that?
May I ask a question?
Yes, Edna. I just wanted to let Jim finish.
Oh, I thought he had finished, sorry.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, good.
Should we then start earlier on those dates?
I think we've taken it into consideration, Edna, by not scheduling any new applications to try and make up that time. We had the lengthy conversation with John about how long we think these things will take. I think we'll be okay. We can revisit that after the April 18th, which is the seeker overview. And if folks at that time feel you'd like to start a little earlier, we can always bump back that part of the program, the committee meeting, because it won't affect the public hearings or their timing. So I think we can set that aside and revisit it after the 18th. that work for you, Edna?
Sure. Thanks.
Anybody else unclear about what we'll be doing? Any questions about seeker or anything at this time?
If, just one question on the 18th, if we don't complete the review before public hearings, we'll finish it that evening after public hearings, or do you think we'll be able to cover
Well,
it
we
all
don't,
before?
I think we're expecting. Well, we don't have to start the public hearing specifically at the time posted. We can't start them before it.
Okay,
So we can take as long as we feel is reasonable in the overview and then move on to the public hearings. I'm looking at what might be coming up, and, you know, as always, some of these are a moving target. Some choose not to come back, so I really can't tell you at this point how many exactly we'll have in public hearings on the 18th, but it looks like a sizable amount. Hence the desire to just not keep adding new ones to lengthen out the meeting. So thanks, Joe, for asking. Anyone else?
I just like to say, Melody, it's really important that all the board members try and participate if we can. These are important discussions that will have, you know, important findings, I guess you'd say, at the end. So making sure everyone can be there to go through these, particularly on May 2nd, when we have to take a vote on the part twos.
Right. I believe we have some guidance documents on seeker that we can get out to everybody, so we'll have a chance to look at that before
Yeah,
that.
it's all, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's all public, and I'll make sure to send the links to that to everyone on the board.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, then we can move ahead to new applications. The first up this evening is Michael Gregory, 245 Route 308, a bedroom addition on site plan review. Who is here for Mr. Gregory?
Mr. Gregory is here. Can you hear
Okay.
me? Great.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, start my video. Okay, here we are. I see myself here. And you can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So what would you like from me?
I think we would like you to explain to planning board members what your project's all about, what you hope to do, and give us as great a detail as you can.
Oh, okay. Well, we're planning on building on the north side of our house a 15 by 15 foot bedroom downstairs. It's going to be part of a area that is now that is used. It will be one story. I think you had asked for some changes on the plans, which I have submitted. It shows the new things that I submitted shows a walkway around. You request a new pathway, the plantings around. We had a double French door, a 5/0 French double door that we changed to a single door, 36 inches. The addition will become a third bedroom for the house. Currently, when we bought the house, we had the septic inspected. It was, I think this was an issue that had come up about the, extra bedroom. We eliminated one of the upstairs bedrooms. It was very small and really sort of unusable as a bedroom. We turned it into a master bedroom closet, thereby making the house a 2-bedroom house. This will turn it back into a 3-bedroom house. The septic system that went in when we bought the house, or before we bought the house by the previous owner, a condition of the sale, was for a 3-bedroom house, and that was submitted to Dutchess County Environmental Health and approved and installed. So it's existing and working fine. So I think you can see from the site, get a pretty good idea of what we're building. Things that I can help you with, I'll be happy to.
Okay. Jim, do you have any comments?
Really quickly, we did talk about this in a pre-con meeting and a couple of the issues. One of them that the planning board is aware of based on my memo is that The addition does not meet the side yard setback required in the area and bulk regulations, but it is grandfathered. So that's not an issue for the applicant, even though they don't meet that setback. Otherwise, we really don't see any significant planning issues with the addition to the back of the property. And though it will be visible to the neighbor, we believe that Michael has talked to the neighbor, I think. It won't be generally visible from the street. Coverage maximums for the lot aren't being exceeded, despite the fact that the lot is not 5 acres in the RC5, and all those setbacks are being met when you take into account the grandfathered setbacks. So generally speaking, with the addition proposed on the back and of the same kind of design as the rest of the house in terms of the siding and windows, we didn't see any planning issues with it.
Okay, planning board members, questions of Michael?
I don't have any questions for you all. I don't know so the next stage of this is if you approve it, you'll issue the building.
Well, what happens next is that we have a draft procedural resolution, which will allow us to accept your application. We will then ask 2 members of the planning board to make a site visit and report back to us at the next scheduled meeting for your application. So there's one more step here. Any other questions?
No, that's it. Is that the next meeting, the next plan meeting?
That would be that. Gretchen?
May
When would-
2nd.
May
That would be
2nd.
May 2nd. So let me make sure that none of my colleagues on the planning board have any questions they'd like to ask.
Yeah, you're all welcome to come over and take a look at it anytime.
Okay, Jim, do you want to put up the draft procedural resolution?
Do that. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so the draft procedure resolution, we'll accept the application supporting documents as adequate for further review by the planning board advisors and the public. We're going to classify this action as a type 2 under seeker, for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded. We'll schedule a public hearing for May 2nd at 6:15. And we need to send it to the CAB, HAPAC, because it is a historic property, historic house, and Dutchess County. And then we need to assign planning board members for a site visit.
Who would like to visit? I'm happy to go. I'll go. Who wants to go with me?
I'll go with you, Melody.
Is that Craig?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I think that pretty much covers it.
I do have another question for you.
It's very hard to hear you, Michael.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, a little better.
Okay, I'm not very familiar with these Zoom calls. So there's a meeting on May 2nd, and then there's a process that after that to review everything.
If everything goes well, we'll schedule following this meeting. We'll schedule a site visit with you. We'll come back at the May 2nd meeting. We will give a report. If at
Yeah.
that time other planning board members have questions, they will ask them. If not, we will move to an approval resolution. And unless, and of course, there are neighbors that have concerns, they will be publicly noticed about the public hearing coming up. They will have a chance to comment if they so choose, positively or negatively. And barring any unforeseen circumstances, you would most likely leave that meeting with an approval.
Okay, so I should be present for that May 2nd.
It would be, I think you should be.
Of course. Okay, great. That's what I need.
And Gretchen will send you all the information and we'll be in touch with you to schedule a site visit.
Sounds fine. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I have delegates who are going, seen the resolution. Could I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So moved, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. Second, please.
Second, Joe.
Second, Craig. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. We'll be in touch, Michael.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a nice evening.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
The next new application before us is Rebecca Tadakonda, 310 Enterprise Drive, for a pool house, detached garage, and utility shed, site plan and special use permit.
Hi, I'm Wendy Wisbren, the architect for the clients.
Hello, Wendy, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Just a small correction, it's Enterprise Road, it's not Enterprise Drive.
Okay, thanks for that correction.
Sure. So we're here tonight because our clients have an existing property with a house and 2 accessory structures. And we would like to build 3 additional accessory structures, which will put us in excess of the 3 that are allowed. And we're also applying for a special use permit for an accessory dwelling unit because the pool house will eventually be used as a second residence on the property. So the property is about just under 39 acres. And the first accessory dwelling, accessory building is the pool house, which is about 3,000 square feet. 1,800 of that is enclosed space and 1,200 is terrace. And so the pool is existing. We're just going to be building the pool house. The next accessory structure is a detached garage, which is located to the north of the house. And then the third accessory structure is an existing utility pad that'll be converted into a utility shed. So all of the utilities are in place already. They would just like to add a roof because they can see the pad from the upstairs rooms of the existing house. And so that is in essence the scope of the work. We've also included site plans showing the tree implications and proposed planting plans and a list of plants that will be used. We also have lighting schedule in there showing the lighting and the materials. So those are the plants. That's the existing site for the proposed pool house. You see the corner of the pool and there's a small bench to the left and a little fenced area. That's the existing pool equipment, which will be relocated into the building. And the fence that you see beyond, you see the double gate beyond there, sort of in the center of the photo, that is the front line of where the pool house will be. So it's set back behind those trees. And then there are some trees that you can see in this picture that will be removed, but we're proposing to replace them in kind with additional trees in a slightly different location. So you can see that's the back. This is the plan of the pool house. So the office, currently it will be used as an office, but eventually will be used as a bedroom. So it's it will be a 1-bedroom house with a bath. Yeah. The next drawing is the site plan. There's some elevations. So here's the lighting plan. There's very little exterior lighting. There is some lighting along the front edge of the walkway, and then some down lighting in the underside of the soffit and just a couple of sconces. So very minimal outside lighting is proposed. And the materials of the building will be it's a grayish thermally treated hemlock cladding. And then the exposed steel will be painted dark gray color. And there's dry laid stone walls at the perimeter. And we have a large porcelain tile that's covering the terrace area. Yes. So there you can see a view of it, of the building. There's the large terrace to the right there. This is the existing location of the proposed garage. So these existing walls will be retained and we're just going to build the garage within the enclosure of that. And it'll come out just a couple feet beyond the stone walls. So you can see the existing stone walls drawn around that in the plan. And then you see this is the proposed view. with the building sort of tucked in there. And it has a very low shed roof because there are a couple of really nice trees right behind the building. So those will just be limbed up and they shouldn't be impacted because we kept the roof quite low back there. And then I think the last little building. So this is the existing utility shed, and this is the proposed version. Very simple, also gray cladding. It's open for airflow for the existing equipment that's in there, but it'll be the same materials as the pool house, which is the existing house is a gray cladding as well. It's a stained cedar, I think. And that's basically it.
Thank you, Wendy. Jim?
Thanks, Melody. So we took a look at this. I don't think we have any significant planning issues related to the project. I do want to note the applicant is before the ZBA currently for some variances. So that is going through the process at the moment. I believe, Wendy, you've applied to Dutchess County Board of Health to review the septic and you're waiting to hear from them. Is that correct?
Well, we haven't quite gotten to the approval, but we did meet with our engineer who's on this call, Mark, tonight, and we will be proceeding with that. So it is in process. We just haven't reached out to the BOH quite yet. We're
Okay.
almost ready to do that.
Yeah, so as well as we really don't have any planning issues with this, we did want to kind of applaud the applicant for the creation of a green roof on the pool house, which is the best practice. We love to see that kind of thing.
Great.
But other
Well,
than
the
that,
landscape architect is also on the call tonight, John Mark Flack. So he's responsible for that. I won't take credit.
so other than that, it's a very large site. Everything is set well back onto the property. I don't see any planning issues.
Thank you. Planning board members, questions, comments?
The foundation of the pool house, is that going to be, it's not clad in stone like the other buildings are, correct?
No, it's not. So we have this large format porcelain tile. It's like a 4x4 tile. That will be the floor of the terrace, and it's going to wrap down the sides as well. And there'll actually be quite a bit of planting in front of it.
Okay, so it's not going to be visible from below, because in another context, I determined that this property is, I think sits on the highest elevation in the entire town of Rhinebeck.
Oh, wow. Well, that's nice for them.
I mean, it's very close to the border with Milan, and there's some higher ground around, but it's it's a pretty, I would imagine, a pretty commanding view from there.
It is a beautiful site and a beautiful view, yes, and totally tucked away with no neighbors nearby, so it's pretty idyllic.
Wendy, is there any way you can add to this, this image? What do you expect the landscaping to be?
Yes, we could make an attempt at that. There is a landscape plan in here, so we could work on rendering plants is a little bit of a challenge on my end, but we could certainly make an attempt to do that, yes.
We can
I
do
think-
that. We could actually render a version of what we're planning. That wouldn't be a problem.
Okay, I think that would help, and it would address, maybe go toward addressing Craig's question.
Yeah, we're
Sure.
planning thousands of perennials and shrubs and trees. Everything would be native, kind of a stylized native woodland, and all of the foundations would be kind of blurred with all these plantings.
And I'll also note that there are several other trees actually between us and where the pool house is. And so if I drew all the trees in, you wouldn't be able to see the building.
Right.
So this is a bit of an architectural liberty view of the project.
I see.
Okay, I think, the closer we can get to the actual finished
No
look,
problem.
would be great to have as part of the application.
I
Other
think the
planning.
client
board-
would like to see it too, so it'll serve two purposes.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay, we have a draft procedural resolution, Jim.
So we will asking the board to accept the application and supporting documents for further review by the planning board of advisors and the public, classifying the action as type 2 under seeker, for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded. We will schedule a public hearing for May 2nd at 6:15. We will send this on to the CAB for review and also to Dutchess County Planning for their review. And we need to assign some planning board members for a site visit.
I will go.
Thank you, Edna. Who would like to go with Edna?
I can go with Edna. It's Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. All right. Could I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So move.
Moved by Craig, second.
Second, Delise.
Thank you, Delise. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, hearing none, the motion carries. Wendy, Edna, and Joe will be in touch with you to schedule a time.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, you too.
Next, the Rhinebeck Community Nursery School, 34 Brookmead Drive, for a playground site plan amendment and special use permit.
Excuse me, Melody.
Yes,
I think I need to sit this one out. My wife teaches in the nursery school, so can I recuse from this?
yes, you can.
Okay.
So let the minutes record that Craig has recused himself. All right, let's move ahead. I think I saw Rebecca here. Rebecca, are you presenting?
Hi, Victoria Polidoro is here. I'm going to start.
Okay,
So good evening, Chairwoman and the rest of the board. I'm Victoria Polidoro, an attorney here on behalf of the applicants Rhinebeck Community Nursery School and Brookmead. We're here tonight with Andy Rimpf from Labella, Rebecca Stotts from Rhinebeck Community Nursery School, and Brian Zeiden from Brookmead. The applicants are seeking an amended site plan and special use permit to allow the installation of an outdoor play area. You'll recall that in September, the board granted the applicants the right to have an accessory nursery school use at the site. They're now looking to modify the approval so that the children have a playground closer to the building. They're currently using the soccer fields for play, which is lovely, but they are looking for a closer option where they don't have to cross the road. No expansion of the accessory use itself is proposed. It's just the exterior playground. The playground itself is approximately 3,308 square feet, and they're proposing a 4-foot high fence. It's a type 2 action under seeker, and tonight we're looking for the board to classify the action, refer it to county planning, and schedule a hearing. And I'm now going to turn it over to Andy so he can walk you through the site plan. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Victoria. My name is Andy Rimpf. I'm from Labella Associates, formerly Chazen. So if you see Chazen Company's logo on anything, that's why. Thanks. I was fortunate enough to be involved back a few years back when the Brookmead Center was constructed. And this project, since, as Victoria mentioned, the community nursery school has a leased space within what was originally the Brookmead Center building. And this particular site area is out adjacent kind of to the side of Brookmead Center, and it's flanked by an older garage structure and an older house structure kind of on the north and south of the page. So this particular area is basically a banked off lawn area as a result of the creation of the Brookmead Center. So it's a pre-disturbed area that's basically being used for lawn. So what we want to do is create the playground in this space, which, as Victoria said, can be directly linked to the activities of the indoor facility at the Brookmead Center. So we have a small sidewalk 5 feet wide, probably about 70 feet in total length, that would be designed to be under 5%, just barely under 5%. So it's accessible for the children to bring you to a playground area, which we've cited in this location because of its proximity to the building, but also it's in a kind of a good nestled location. The playground itself, Victoria mentioned, 3,000 square feet. The total project area is about 23,000 square feet, so a little less than a quarter acre of total site area. The playground components are kind of a mixture of a few different exercise equipments, all targeted for the age of the nursery school. Monkey bars, a climb and discovery cage, some outdoor building, small building sets, some kind of kitchen set area, stackable toys, kind of a low intensity kind of use, kind of surrounding a couple of the event spaces. So you see them kind of laid out geometrically. There's a couple of mature trees around there, so we wanted to nestle this in, bring the trees into the part of the shade of the play area in there, and then the perimeter boundary of the play area would be a 4-foot high chain link fence with a top rail and knuckle salvaged black PVC coated fence system, but a pretty simple some residential scale, let's call it, fence system, and 2 gate locations for access to the playground. And outside of that, there's a couple of small storage, bins. They would be like a Rubbermaid system, something that's weatherproof and protected to be able to store the toys for that. The parking at the edge is existing, so everything in this area of work is an existing lawn space or play space or some little raised gardens that are there. The parking that we constructed back in the day has just an asphalt edge, so there is an edge up against a bank of grass as it goes up, kind of right to left. You're going up in elevation. So the idea is we wanted to put some boulders along that edge, some just decent sized rocks and boulders, just as an extra security kind of barrier between the vehicles and the children. There's about a 25-foot distance between those uses, but just as extra precaution, that's what we're proposing, is to add some just natural stone boulders along that perimeter for protection. So as Victoria said, it's an amended site plan. It's an amended special use to basically provide play area for the children that are already participating at the nursery school. And can take any questions that you may have, but and the surfacing, I didn't mention the surfacing, sorry. The surfacing would have been engineered wood fiber, so it'd be a natural color, engineered wood fiber mulch, which is essentially mulch, but engineered for the play safety of the children within the actual rectangular play area there.
Thank you. Rebecca, anybody else from your team wish to speak at this time?
Not that I
Okay.
know of. Thank you.
Okay. Jim, I believe you have some comments.
Yeah, so I have a couple comments. The first one, applaud the applicant for putting the boulders in. I think we've kind of preliminarily discussed this last time around, and putting that measure of safety between the vehicles and the fencing is something that I've been advocating for. I'm glad to see that. There are a couple issues that I've identified, and we could probably discuss these further later. The first one is that there are 2 7x7 storage sheds shown on the plans. Based on the description, we believe that these are portable sheds. If only one was proposed, it would actually be exempt from several of the items that I'm about to discuss. But since 2 are proposed, the zoning code actually only allows for a single portable accessory building with a maximum floor area of 80 square feet. And what we have proposed here are 2 with a total of 98 square feet from what I could read. So that requires those to be considered again as part of the special use permit, but it is above what is permitted in that code to be allowed to be kind of exempted. Since the parcel is over 10 acres, they are allowed to have more than 3 accessory roof structures on the property. If a special use permit is granted by the planning board, there are already more than 3. We're technically adding 2 more, even though they are 7x7, plastic sheds. So again, we're looking at this from the perspective of additional accessory roof structures on the site. Again, just something else for the board to keep in mind as we go through our review. What else? Oh, in addition to that, since there are several other accessory structures on the site, we need to evaluate whether the total square footage of all of the accessory structures is over 1,500 square feet in floor area. If they are, and we believe they probably are with everything on the site, we might be looking at the need for a variance for floor area of the 2 sheds, which is why I bring up the idea of the 1 shed, that if one was put in there to code, it wouldn't actually require a special use permit review, and it would be permitted by right if it was under 80 square feet. Because we have 2, it actually may trigger a bunch of other things that then need to be considered as we move forward with the project. So, these notes will be given to the applicant and we can discuss those, with the interim zoning administrator and others as well as tonight. Additionally, the sheds are unfortunately located closer to the street than the principal building on the site. Any accessory structures that are closer to the street than the principal structure also require potentially a variance. I know, again, these are 2 7x7 plastic sheds, but that's the way the code reads to me. So another item I think we would need to discuss. If the sheds were located behind, essentially a line parallel to the nearest edge of the building that's parallel with the road, and they were behind that line, then that requirement would go away. But where they're proposed, I think there is a potential variance requirement there. Additionally, based on the definition of accessory structure and play structure, I believe that the play structure that's proposed may also require variance because it too is located in front of the principal structure. Again, kind of all falling in line with the same requirements in the code. If that were behind that edge that I had mentioned of the building that it's at, I don't believe that that would be necessary since that building would be considered, I think, the principal building for this use. And then finally, the fence that's proposed is a 4-foot fence, which is good because that is what's required in a front yard. However, there was a discussion of including some fabric material, I believe, on the inside of the fence. So that may make it so that the fence can't provide for the passage of views, which is an issue we have discussed in the past. So that would be another, I believe, special use permit discussion for the board to have. So those are my findings on, what I've found from my preliminary review that I wanted to raise for the board tonight.
Thank you. Chairwoman, may I just address some of those? Because I think we can cross some off the list. The applicants have a grant which has to be used, so there's a time constraint, and they're happy to remove one of those 7x7 structures and to move the other behind the edge of the building. So we can submit that to you for the next meeting. I wasn't clear on which corner you were measuring from, because the front of this building is certainly, I would say over 100 feet in front of the playground, the front edge. So could you just clarify which edge you're using for the playground variance?
The building, the playground is in front of the building, right? Between the building and the street?
I mean, I guess it depends on how you measure the front. Sure.
The front
Okay.
is 308, right? So it would be
Okay.
aligned, parallel to the closest edge of the building, which would be here, which is why I deem that, the playground is in front of the building. So you're in the front yard and you're unfortunately in front of the building with what we're proposing. So accessory structures in front of the, and unfortunately, a play structure falls into that. Accessory structures in front of the principal building do require that variance. There are several buildings on this property that potentially could complicate things, but if we assume that this building, any of the buildings really, it still would require that variance, unfortunately. So for the play structure and the shed. So if the shed gets moved behind the building, I think it would take care of that, but the play structure itself obviously has to be in the fenced area and is still between the building and the road.
Okay.
All right, is that it, Victoria?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Other planning board members, questions?
I have a question about a play structure being considered an accessory structure. I mean, people often put things like slides or whatever next to their house, things that kids play on. I haven't really thought of them as an accessory structure. Jim, would you say more about that?
Yep, I can do that. So an accessory structure is defined as a structure or building, the use of which is customarily incidental and subordinate to that of the principal structure or building, and which is attached thereto or is located on the same lot or premises, except for an accessory dwelling unit, guest cottage, or echo cabin unit approved under certain parts of the chapter, which this is not. Accessory structures are not for the purpose of human habitation and may include such structures or buildings as garages, swimming pools, spas, whirlpools, hot tubs, tennis courts, gardener tool sheds, barns, studios, greenhouses, and playhouses, and such elements as generators for non-emergency use, satellite dish antennas, and solar and wind energy systems. So as it's defined in the code, it falls under the definition of an accessory structure, and any accessory structure in a front yard technically needs a variance.
So is there something here like a little building that you go into, or I thought these were things that you climb on?
Correct. They're just play elements that you climb on.
I mean, I have a bench in my garden. Is that an accessory structure?
If I could speak up for just a moment,
Yes, please, Michael.
under the
absolutely.
definition for accessory structure, play structures such, and among other things, greenhouses, tennis courts, all that stuff, are in the definition of accessory structure in our zoning law. So our zoning law does consider a play structure to be an accessory structure. And play structure is defined as a recreation structure such as a treehouse, playhouse, or prefabricated play equipment located at grade or elevated, but not intended for habitation and without amenities such as electricity or plumbing. If that's any help.
Is there any height requirement on that? Because this Climb and Discover cave is only 40 inches high.
Accessory structures can be no more than 20 feet tall, so I think you're okay there. Unless you have a big tree house.
Nope. Thank you.
Okay. Michael, let me make sure that there are no other questions from the planning board. All right, Michael, I believe you've had some communication with Brookmead that you might
Yes,
want
I
to
did.
share as well.
Yes, I did. As the zoning enforcement officer, I did send a notice of apparent violation to Brookmead because the Arts Cafe was being open to service the general public. And there are a couple of problems with that. First of all, a public restaurant is not permitted in the RC5 zoning district. And secondly, the approvals that we gave for the pavilion were for the Brookmead community, guests and visitors of the residents there. I have received a letter from Brookmead saying that they understand that situation. They're going to cease any attempt to get people outside the Brookmead community coming into the cafe, although I do believe they are contemplating getting a use variance at some point in the future to permit them to do so. But at the present time, we do have a letter that Brian sent to me saying that they recognize the concern and that they will, make every effort not to be offering service to members, people who are not members of the committee, guests of members of the committee, family members, things like of the community, I should say, family members and that sort of thing. And they have ceased all outside advertising to the general public. And I believe that that satisfies me as CEO that they have addressed this potential violation.
And that is indeed why this application can move forward at this time.
Correct.
Okay. So we just wanted everybody involved with this project to be aware of that. We've sought assurances that the public facing aspects of this pavilion are not continuing at this time while they're considering coming in for a use variance.
Yes.
Okay. All right, anything else from planning board members?
Do we have, or are we going to get an illustration of what the fence is going to look like?
I had requested that in my memo, Edna, and we'll forward that on to the applicant. So yeah, we'll ask for a representative picture or something just so the planning board knows.
I thought we did provide a picture. It's the same chain link fence as the one that's currently around the soccer fields, the black chain link.
I think
And
the question that Jim raised was not so much about the fence itself, but the fabric lining, which would.
and they're going to remove the fabric lining now that they've heard Jim's comments. So it'll be precisely the same fence.
Do we have an image of that, Victoria, in the packet?
On the
I
detail
thought-
sheet, there is a detail. It's black and white, but
Okay.
There's a
Yeah.
detail. We just didn't have a picture. And again, I don't know that it's an issue. We're in for special permit anyway, but it is something we'd have to discuss.
Well, it would be helpful if you just want to attach a picture of the chain link fence that exists.
We'll do that.
Thank you. Edna, is that okay?
That'd be great, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I believe we have a draft procedural resolution, Jim.
Yes, we do. So we will accept the application and supporting documents is adequate for further review by the planning board, its advisors, and the public. We classify the action as type 2 under seeker. We will schedule a public hearing for May 2nd. May 2nd at 6:15. We will be sending this to the CAB for their comments. We will send it to Dutchess County Planning for their comments, and we need to delegate planning board members for a site visit.
Who would like to visit the nursery school?
I'll go.
I'll go. I'll go
That
with
was
Michael, Sean and Michael.
Sean and Michael. Okay, thank you. All right. Any other further questions? If not, I'd
No.
entertain. Pardon?
I was gonna say, no, thank you.
Could I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So moved, Sean.
Thank Sean, second, Edna, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the motion carries.
Craig,
Okay,
just
so
note, Craig
Sean
was
and
recused.
Michael.
Just
Pardon?
one note again, Craig was recused.
Yep, Craig was recused and Craig can come back now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
The last of the new applications for this evening, Richard Kopchiansky, 1 Schatzel Avenue, Tavern Restaurant Site Plan and Special Use Permit. Who is here? Richard?
I'm here. This is Warren Smith, and
Warren.
Richard Kopachanski, I believe, is on the call as well.
He
Okay,
is here.
This is an application to reauthorize use of the former China Rose restaurant space at 1 Schatzel Avenue for a new restaurant after several years of vacancy, I guess. Kip's Tavern. The restaurant will occupy the same space that it did before. There've been some upgrades in the kitchen and so forth, and there will be proposed outdoor dining seasonally on the terrace that faces west toward the river, as was intermittently the case when China Rose occupied the space. The site is a very small, typical hamlet site. There is no possibility for additional parking on the site, so patrons will have to continue to use street parking and parking lot parking available close by in the hamlet, and potentially off hours, some of the Amtrak parking. But the site plan basically doesn't show any significant changes from what has existed heretofore, with the exception of the fact that there is now an accessible entrance added on the west side through an existing door into the dining space. So patrons can more easily get into the space. There will still be the door that exists at the bottom of Schatzel Avenue, sort of across from the hotel, but there will be the additional entrance there used on a regular basis on the west side. And then the kitchen entrance is further around, sort of at the recess of the building there. But that's pretty much the extent of changes to the exterior of the building. There were some renovations inside the building to create accessible restroom, a couple of restrooms. But for the most part, it's very much the space that you will recall if you ever were there in the past.
okay. Richard, anybody else from your team wish to speak?
No, if you have questions, I'm the person to ask, or Warren.
Okay. Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. I have a couple things. Overall, I wanted to say, as a planner, I'm excited to see, vacant space, being looked at to be revitalized and reused. I think that's great for the hamlet. Never like to see vacant storefronts and buildings. Do have a couple comments I wanted to make, and Richard and Warren, I think I've heard these before. They heard them in the pre-con, but I'm going to mention them again. The first one actually is related to the materials that were submitted. And Warren, I didn't see detailed site plans for the use that we were expecting, or pictures. And I know in a previous application, you gave us kind of the interior floor plans and some pictures of the outside of the building that I guess I was expecting. I think this was the only one that we had received as part of the application. So I was hoping we could get that material submitted for the board. I think, like I say, it was done for the previous one, so it's already developed when we reviewed, I think maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah, 2019, I think, actually.
Yeah. So if there's any way, I know there are pictures, but if there's any way that could be submitted
Sure.
as well, just to provide a little more information on kind of what's going on. Like I say, I think it was pretty much done. I think that would just help the board understand kind of what's going on here. If we don't remember that last one, because it was a while ago and the board has reviewed a lot. At
Yeah.
time, so that was my first one, just so we can get some more information. The next two really relate to parking and walkability. And again, I know I've mentioned this in the pre-conference meeting, but to me as a bike and pedestrian planner and generally as a planner, walkability is important. I don't know and didn't see in the plans here any plans for kind of changing the walkway and the sidewalk area in front of the building. I really would like to see as a planner that the sidewalk be reintroduced there. I think it was there. It's kind of there in some forms. But I really do think a sidewalk running along here is important, particularly given the use that's proposed to go in. Also, kind of what the activity is that we expect to go down there in that area. And that brings me to issue number 2, which you did touch on, Warren, and that's parking. Parking is a major issue. You acknowledge that. We know that you're proposing to utilize 12 public parking spaces on the street. And while we're absolutely advocates for minimizing unnecessary parking and parking surface area, utilizing shared parking and other things, the conditions in the hamlet are tough when it comes to parking. The planning board does have latitude to consider and address parking, and it's extremely important to, I think, discuss this in the public setting. And with that, I think, I just wanted to mention that, any use going in the hamlet is obviously going to need parking, and we understand that. And so, the discussion of utilizing the existing parking spaces is fine, but again, we have to acknowledge those are public parking spaces. They aren't dedicated for this, this particular use. And I think Richard and Warren, you both have acknowledged that. But I just want to mention it publicly that, there are significant constraints, and we do think the customer experience in the future, could potentially be impacted as more and more businesses come in. There's a new business that came in up the road. Richard, you're proposing to do something. The hotel right now is not being used. That could come back into play as well and be looking to utilize parking. All of this is going to be looking to utilize that same public parking. It's our understanding that the Amtrak lot is not really open for public parking anymore, kind of moving forward. And so that, that's not available to be used as shared parking. And we just want to note that, we're hoping a lot of people will walk, obviously, but it is important to note that, a lot of people do drive. And with this project and future projects, I'm recommending that the planning board, include a line in an approval resolution stating the applicant does acknowledge the past, current, and likely future parking issues, and that the town is not going to be responsible for trying to help identify finding new parking or really addressing these parking issues, because we know it's tight and we know there's an issue and we know it's been discussed for a long time. But that kind of comes with the territory of working down in the hamlet on opening a business in that area. So we wanted to mention that. Really quickly, going back to the walkability element, it is a commercial use. We want to make sure that the building will be ADA compliant. I don't do ADA compliance reviews. We kind of put that on the applicant to make sure that it is ADA compliant, but we do just want to note that ADA compliance is a responsibility of commercial business owners. We did read that the operation is approved, and maybe Warren, you can touch on this a little more with a little more detail. The operation is approved by the county health department for 28 seats at tables and 11 seats at the bar. I don't know how old that is, and we were just thinking that since the previous operation ceased, some time ago, it'd probably be good to confirm that prior approval is still valid, unless Warren or Richard, you have some information you can add to that thought.
I think it might. We probably would gain 2 more seats, because I took an apartment out upstairs and it has no longer a kitchen. So I didn't approach the health department, but I believe we would probably get 2 more seats by the health department.
Because you are on your own septic, right? With this property?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, I put that out for the planning board to consider if we want to get any input from the county, just to confirm that still is the case and that we're okay with the numbers. And then my last comment, my last comment, and it's enough for tonight. The proposed sign is proposed to be flush mounted, 19 inches by 65 inches. The zoning code details what the sign requirements can be. I do believe that the sign is actually too large based on the code. I think that the sign can be a maximum of 8 square feet in surface area, and I think this comes out somewhere just below 9 at about 8.7 square feet. So I just ask you to take a look at the sign and the sign regulations for size. I also think the planning board would probably like to see something a little more definitive in terms of what the sign is going to be. We did get a picture with kind of a sketch on it, but I think the type of material, things like that, we typically ask for signs with sign permits in the hamlet. And Melody, that's what I have.
Okay. Is this the only part of the application? Do we have a photograph of the front facade of the building?
I can provide that, certainly.
I think it's important for planning board members that are not going to be making the site visit to understand, to be able to see and understand Jim's comments regarding the sidewalk.
Yeah, certainly.
So that I think would be useful going forward.
Would you like me to? pull up one from the last application or pull up a Google
If you
map?
have it handy, yes, because I'd like both the folks going out in the field and those who are not going out in the field to understand the context of your comments.
All right. Well, everyone, while you're talking, I'll pull up a Google map and we can take a look.
Okay,
at it.
well, while you're doing that, I'll turn to my colleagues and ask if they have questions or comments.
I was struck by the stress in Jim's notes on the lack of parking and the fact that the town will not be responsible for providing it, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a conclusion that better parking is simply not possible to be provided there in Rhinecliff? Or is this something that the town should be looking at and the planning board should suggest to the town that it be looked at?
Well, I don't know the details of any discussions that have gone on. I know it's been discussed. It's a general on and off for a long time. There've been discussions related to Amtrak, but beyond that, I just want to make it clear that, you know, if parking for the businesses does become an issue, that, you know, that was acknowledged as we're going through the review process, so that the business owners and the people utilizing those public spaces realize that they are still public spaces.
Michael can confirm my memory, but Edna, I believe that every time we've looked at projects in the hamlet,
Came up
in-
until 11 o'clock today.
every time we've looked at projects going back to the hotel, you know, obviously the topic of parking comes up. And Michael can correct me, but I know of no situation where the town themselves have expressed interest in trying to be a party to resolving parking problems in Rhinecliff.
I would agree with that, Melody, but we had, the last time we really addressed parking for a commercial facility to any extent was when they were redoing the Rhinecliff Hotel. And at that time, CSX was willing to lease, under a lease agreement with the hotel operators, a fairly significant number of parking places so that they could run the hotel and the restaurant in the hotel. Those spaces are no longer available. I believe Amtrak now controls them, not CSX, and Amtrak has made it clear that they have no interest in sharing their parking area with any other user in the hamlet of Rhinecliff. And I don't believe the town has ever seriously taken up any discussion of trying to find parking in the hamlet, which maybe because it's kind of hard to find a place where you'd put it.
Yeah, him. You just check that CPA from chest to toes. Okay, back to.
I thank you, Hugo. Okay, so this is the situation, and I think Jim, it's pretty evident what Jim's talking about in terms of sidewalk area, so.
Can I address parking?
I would like to just ask Mr. Hanson, who seems to be coming in and out, to remain muted until he's asked to speak. Certainly, Richard, go ahead.
Okay, yes. I believe I've addressed parking in 1994 when I bought the building. You know, up and down Chatzel Avenue on that left side of this picture, it was just open parking, and Amtrakers would be there for a day, 3 days, 5 days. And also the lot, which is up around the trees on the left, it wasn't for Rhinecliff businesses and residents only. It was me who went to the town and said, we have to do something about that for Rhinecliff businesses and residents, because it's just being taken over by Amtrakers. So in 1994, that's when we got the 2-hour parking signs all the way up Chatzel Avenue. And that's 8 spaces right there. Our little lot, which is for Rhinecliff residents and businesses only, that we changed in 1994, there's 15 spaces there. Now, that's all the same since 1994. In 1999, I bought a building around the corner that has 5 garages and 2 extra spaces out in front of 2 of the garages. And in 2006, I built a little up the street here on the right-hand side, a small 2-office, one downstairs, one upstairs, 600 square feet. You know, it's good for one person maybe on each floor. So we had to put parking, and instead of putting 2 parking spaces, we put 6 in. So that, all those things that I've worked with since 1994 to get more parking. And I believe we did a really good job in getting that done and securing more parking. You know, not only is that parking used behind that green building up the street for the 2 little offices, but like when we have events at the Morton Library, I will, direct people to park behind that building. Yeah, here's the public parking for Rhine Cliff residents and businesses only, right here. Well done, Jim. And without taking a building down and make parking, I just don't think we can do anything else.
Okay.
Yeah, and Richard, I'm not advocating taking a building down. I just want to make sure we have the
No,
discussion
I
that
know.
everyone understands, that parking is tight, and we're talking about businesses who want customers, and just need to understand, what it is we're talking about here in terms of parking. But no, I would never advocate for taking down buildings to put in parking. It's just a discussion I think the planning board needs to have, as we understand, their uses coming back in, which is great. Like I said, we don't want to see vacant structures, but we all have to understand kind of what that comes with. The planners have a saying, a lack of parking is a good thing. Too much parking is a bad thing. It means nobody's there if there's too much parking, right? So it is what it is, but we just have to understand that and, make sure everyone's comfortable with it as we move forward, because I do believe there'll be others, other businesses coming in, proposing to utilize the same spaces. That's all. But yeah, I would never
All right.
talk about taking down a building. And I do think it would be really tough to find, a significant amount of parking within a short walk, we'll say, of where we are here. So yeah, I agree.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, so I think unless there are other questions from the planning board, we can move to the draft procedural resolution.
Well, give me 1 second. I have to switch my files here.
Okay.
Okay, draft procedural resolution. Again, accept the application and supporting documents as adequate for further review by the planning board, its advisors, and the public. We'll classify this as type 2 under seeker. We will schedule the public hearing for May 2nd at 6:15. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 9, send it to the CAB. In accordance with Chapter 118, I'll send it to the Waterfront Advisory Committee. In accordance with Chapter 125, refer this to HAPAC because we are in the Historic District. We'll also send this to Dutchess County Planning for their review, and we need to delegate planning board members for a site visit.
I would like to go to Rhine Cliff.
We'll go.
I'll go, Delise.
Edna and Delise. Thank you very much. All right, could I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Edna, second.
Second, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard and Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we're going to move into the public hearing portion of our meeting tonight. And up first is Rockledge, 492 Ackert Hook Road, condo units, site plan approval, special use permit, and wetlands permit. At the request of the applicant.
Melody, let me just interrupt you to tell you that I'm recused on this, so I'm going to depart.
Okay, Edna is continuing her position of recusing herself, which she's done from the first day of this application. Thank you for reminding me, Edna. At the request of the applicant, we will be continuing this public hearing until May. They are not going to be present tonight to present any additional information or participate in the meeting, but it is a public hearing. And so I will at this time entertain members of the public who wish to make comments. If you raise your hand, I will ask Jim, who's handling everything, to admit people to make comments. And remind you of the public comment format that Jim's put up. Raise your hand, state your name and address, limit your comments to 5 minutes, provide only new comments, and direct your questions to the planning board. And since there's no applicants represented tonight, you can just direct your questions to the planning board. Okay.
All right. Looks like first up, we have Cornelia Gallo.
Sorry, getting set up here. Cornelia Gallo, 340 Ackerhook Road. Thank you for your time this evening. Based on comments during the last planning board meeting and the Red Hook Daily Catch article, I would like to submit the following comments and thoughts. I'm sorry that Mr. Blakeman and the developers feel that we as the neighbors are acting in our own interest, which is a quote from the article. We're not. We are acting to preserve a neighborhood and a town that has become our home. As I have stated before, I am not against the project. I think the repurposing of the manor house with 6 units and the chapel with 2 units is a wonderful idea. And then maybe an additional 12 units in 2 to 3 clusters would be appropriate for the neighborhood. In the Daily Catch article, Mr. Blakeman had said Rockledge will house at least 72 residents. The section of Ackerhook Road between Vly and Primrose Hill currently only has about 32 people in residence. Rockledge would more than triple the population. By limiting the project to 18 to 20 units, you still increase the population by 100%. That kind of change will change the feel of the neighborhood. There's no way it can't. During the last planning board meeting, Mr. Blakeman also said he would consider walking paths. I'm curious how walking paths would differ from the neighbors being able to walk the roads in Rockledge. When asked during a face-to-face meeting in 2019 if neighbors could walk the Rockledge roads, all 4 of the Rockledge representatives simultaneously from the front row said no. And it left a really lasting impression. I think it also gave the current neighbors an us versus them feeling. I don't need the walking paths, as I would still be walking the roads to access them, but it would be nice to be able to walk the roads. I thank the planning board for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Cornelia.
David?
Hi, I'm David Weiner. I live at 306 Ackerhook Road, about 1/3 of a mile from the proposed Rockledge site. I appreciate the opportunity this evening to speak to you in the democratic process, a nice open process. But the minute I look at some of the other processes you have, I'm very concerned. In response to a press inquiry, I attempted to help a journalist obtain not only the developer's material on site, but also materials that were the copious materials that were submitted by the public. And we found that the public comments are not online and not available. This certainly inhibits any kind of public discussion and public awareness. So we have to insist that the board post public comments on this and other projects. It's just not appropriate to post only developer materials. Also, we really have to insist that the planning board engage in public consultation to identify independent consultants to review consultant reports submitted by the developer, particularly in the area of the environment and traffic. I guess I understand this may be part of the seeker process, but it's very clear that the studies that have been submitted, and particularly in relation to traffic and some of the environmental issues that the public has expressed concern about, are clearly raise a lot of questions that do not appear to be appropriately answered by consultants who have been paid for and controlled by the developer. This is a very important issue. And then finally, I'm very concerned about the objectivity of the board, given recent comments by Edna Lockman. We really have to insist that the board issue a plan to assure its unbiased review of the Rockledge proposal after Edna Lockman, a planning board member who has recused herself from review of the Rockledge proposal, tainted the planning board's process by publishing material supporting the project and really criticizing other people who've criticized the project. This is completely unacceptable. It taints the entire process, and we really need to know what you're going to do to fix this this mess that's been created. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Jim?
All right, next we have Giancarlo.
Hi there, my name is Giancarlo Herring Calvo. I live at 40 Arnett Road in Rhinebeck. I'm 24, and as someone from a younger generation, I'm kind of surprised by the pushback on this project. I don't know any of my friends who can reasonably afford to return to Rhinebeck after graduating college without either an inheritance or living at their parents' house. This is a big project, but it's really not that. It's a big restoration project, but it's really not that many houses. And hopefully it could reduce the actual expense of housing in that region. Also, I'm kind of surprised by the talking about walking on Ackerhook Road, because those roads, I don't know if you guys have been on them, people are flying. I've never felt safe to walk on any of those back roads. Growing up in Rhinebeck, I could never walk on those roads because all those back roads, people are doing 50, 60 miles an hour. And the project is talking about walking paths. They're talking about paying to redo a historic site. This is a good project for the town. It could hopefully make it so people could actually afford to live here. I don't know if you guys have seen, but houses are being sold cash for double their value right now in the town. And it's kind of ridiculous to me that we're blocking housing in a town that is popular. They're doing everything they can. I read through all the reports, the environmental report, the traffic reports. Yeah, sure, we could bring in someone independent, but the more we stonewall projects like this, the higher development costs are going to go. And then housing becomes, in turn, more expensive. And I know some people's nest egg is their house, but we're not building enough housing to destroy property values, just to relieve some of the pressure, because right now it's a ridiculous bubble. And there's a lot of pent up demand for our area, because it's a great area. The schools are great. I went to Rhinebeck High School, I loved it. And it's just surprising to me that there's so much pushback on this. And especially to hear, I think also if there's recusals on the board and planning committees because they're pro for the project, I really think everyone who is against the project or has a financial interest or is running a website should also get off the planning and approval for this process, because I'm surprised by the money that is being spent against this project. Just want to say, as someone who's younger, who's looking at buying a house soon, like I can't come back to Rhinebeck unless I live with my parents. That's the fact of the matter. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Giancarlo.
Patty. Oh, sorry, Melody. Go on.
No, I was going to say Patty's next. And I just want to remind people that this is an opportunity tonight for a public hearing and people get to voice their opinion. I don't want to get into public debate between various people. So I just want to remind you of that I like to put the emphasis on hearing and not debate. So with that, we'll go to Patty.
Hi, Planning Board. This is Patty Langto. I am at 220 Bly Road, a near neighbor of Rockledge. And Giancarlo, I really applaud your perspective. I wish my children could move to Rhinebeck. I would ask that you inquire about the offering price for the development units that are going in at Rockledge. My primary concern, again, is the waterway that the wastewater treatment plant will flow into. It is known as the Fallsburg. Creek is a strong word. It is a lot of wetlands. It is a pond. It is a dry stream bed. It is sometimes a stream, all of those things. So I'm very concerned about that particular aspect of this development. I'm also concerned because I've been out to the DEC website and have attempted to stay tuned into the Speedy's permitting process and have found that according to the research that Edna spoke of at her last comment at the last public hearing, we would have a 30-day window once the New York State DEC had given approval of the Speedy's permit. And it's just not clear to me how we would stay tuned in to know that that permit had been entered and that and what state it's in. So I'm a little concerned about having it all just wash over me and then hear about it after the fact. And I'd like some help with that. So that's all.
Thank you, Patty.
Okay, I think next, I know David had his hand up, but I think we'll go with people who haven't yet spoken. Maybe go to Eleanor, and then David, we can go back to you since you did speak already. So Eleanor?
Did that sound reasonable?
Hi, I just wanted to say that I'm also concerned about the project, and I'm concerned about the number of projects that have suddenly popped up. And is anybody looking at how they're going to impact the surrounding area altogether? It's not going to be just one project. It's going to be Grassmere. It's going to be, you know, I hear that there's another project with 80 units, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I've heard that a couple times. So I think that we need to slow things down and maybe wait for that comprehensive committee, that review committee to, or whatever it's called, to come up with some recommendations before we get too far into the process. You know, maybe we should just slow things down a bit and look a little bit more closely at how they're going to interact and impact the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor.
All right, David.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak again. And I appreciate everybody's comments, whether people agree with me or not. I think it's really great that any member of the public is engaged in this. I just would like to point out, in reference to some of the previous comments, that one of the developers' representatives indicated that the estimated pricing of these units would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million to $2 million. That in no way is going to lower housing costs in this area, and it is in no way going to solve the housing crisis. It's simply going to draw more wealthy people and create more congestion and more environmental problems. You know, everybody's welcome, but we really need to welcome people under the intention of the comprehensive plan. And secondly, I would like to point out that there was some talk of the paths that are on this property and the buildings that are presumably going to be rehabilitated and preserved. Those buildings, the developer's representative previously said in response to my question that this is a private development. So if I or any member, any of my neighbors or any member of my family attempted to walk or look at those rehab buildings or walk on those paths, I would be breaking the law. I would be trespassing. Thirdly, I would like to point out that I ride my bike, and I have neighbors who ride their horses along Ackerd Hook Road and other roads in this area. It is becoming more and more difficult, and this project will simply destroy a quality of life that I paid a substantial amount of money to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, is there anyone else?
Melody, I'm not seeing anyone. We'll just give it a second. Maybe. Kara, you have your hand up.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much. Just a couple of quick things. This is Kara Kewell. I'm at 467 Ackerd Hook Road. I know that there's nobody speaking for the developers per se, but I did notice that Mark Grominski is on the call, and I was wondering if we could get a copy of the what he read out at the last public hearing about the status of their submission. I don't believe it's in the folder.
Okay. Thank you, Kara.
And secondly, just also in response to the hard work that Gary and Edna Lockman did on analyzing the neighborhood, I just did want to say that 5-acre zoning is a limit, not a goal. So the fact that there are smaller properties already, and we think that's wonderful because it makes this area accessible to all kinds of homeowners. The fact that we're already below 5 acres on average on a lot of the surrounding roads is not a reason to give up on the 5-acre limit. It's all the more reason to enforce it and to not only seek 5-acre properties to balance out the smaller properties, but to and the strain that the density already puts on the roads, and to encourage people people donating land and putting land in conservation for perpetuity. So I think those were the two main things. Oh, I just wanted to say on this path issue as well. I understand that it's on the face of it, it sounds like a very nice offer, but unlike the road, who would it be accessible to? Only the homes that are directly opposite it, because there's no parking to reach this path through Rockledge and through these other properties. And to whom would it be accessible unless it's really well cured? You know, it would only be for able-bodied people and nobody with any kind of disability or strolling or strollers. Certainly it wouldn't be available to cyclists. So I think that that's important to keep in mind, that those needs are already met by the road, which connects us not only to Bly Marsh, but all the way into town. And the burden is not on the neighbors then to maintain that as well. Our tax dollars go to maintaining the road. So I just wanted to make those options at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Not
Okay.
seeing any other hands raised, Melody.
All right, then I would like to hear a motion to continue the public hearing. Gretchen, what would be the date? Would it be
May 2nd.
May 2nd? So could I have a motion to continue the public hearing until May 2nd?
So moved, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Second, please.
Second, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Next up, Brindle Valley Phase 3, 167 to 169 River Road. Parking reconfiguration and half basketball court site plan and special use permit. This particular application is going to be continued, the public hearing aspect of it. And I think Michael can give a report as to why at this time we're not discussing it tonight. Michael, are you there?
Let me make sure I'm okay. This afternoon, while I was ZEOing, a neighbor of the project came in and asked me what I knew about the what appeared to be some sort of a golf course facility on the lawns there at this particular property. I had not seen this. Apparently, at least one AstroTurf putting green with a golf hole and a flag has been installed on the property, which obviously is a alteration to the approved landscape plan that they provided us with and that we approved. So the planning board is restricted from proceeding with any review of a project if a violation exists on the property where that project is taking place. So until we can resolve this, and I believe I've spoken with Mr. Graminsky about it, he is going to see to it that this gets resolved so that this issue goes away. But for tonight, we do have an apparent violation on the property of the approved site plan for that particular property. And based on the town zoning law, we would not be permitted to continue.
Okay, planning board members, any questions? Okay, I'm going to ask then for a motion to continue the public hearing, and because of the way this is piling up, I'd like to continue this one to the first meeting in June. Gretchen, what would the date be in June?
One sec. June 6th.
All right, I'd like a motion to continue the public hearing to June 6th.
So moved, Edna.
Thank you,
Second.
Edna. Second, Craig, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. May I also say that I think you probably today, I believe you received today, a rather comprehensive review from the CAB on this project, and I would encourage you to look at that because I think, unfortunately, with this delay, fortunately, we have an opportunity to look at some of the issues that were raised by the CAB. So I would encourage you to do that. Was there public, were there site visits made on this?
Yes.
I think I'm going to defer the report on the site visits tonight until we get back on the agenda in June. So
Okay.
those of you who were tasked with that, write it down so you remember when we get to the next meeting in June.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Next up is T Court Phase 2B, 195 River Road Miniature Train, Central and Southern Loop Site Plan, Special Use Permit and Wetlands Permit. Tonight, based on some of the questions that we've raised in the past, Mark, on behalf of the applicant, has arranged for two experts to join us and to comment. One is the chief of the fire department, who I believe has visited the site, and the other is a person with expertise in the construction and development of miniature trains. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you and let you introduce your folks.
Thank you, Melanie. And actually, Howard Williams is also here representing T-Court LLC. So I think just to keep things moving along for the planning board. Melody, you mentioned the two representatives. So it's Chief Amy from the Rhinebeck Fire Department, and also Dave Slavy. He's our train consultant. I look to you if to start with, the most efficient way to go about tonight's meeting. Would it be, starting with some questions from the planning board, with regard to pertaining to the fire chief. I know safety was a concern, and how that is going to be handled through the Rhinebeck Fire Department, and the same thing with Dave is available to speak, with regard to, construction, maintenance, any details related to the train. So just in an effort to keep things moving along with this tonight's meeting, do you want to start with some questions from the board?
Well, I'd like to start with Chief Amy, and if he would like to just tell us, I know he made a site visit, maybe he'd like to share his observations, any concerns he saw while he was in the field, and then I'll open it up to planning board members for their questions of the chief. Does that work?
That's fine.
Okay. Can the chief, is he here?
I believe so. Let's see.
Not sure.
Jim, do you see the chief?
Don't by name, I don't think.
I think it's Howard, where was it again? It was
Yeah, it was K iPhone, but I think he has gone off the list.
All right, well, let's start with your miniature train expert, and if Kyle comes back on, we'll go back to him.
I'll reach out to Kyle while Dave's speaking. Howard, could you?
Yeah, I'll just introduce Dave. Dave has been working on our project for the past 3 years or so. Just came in to give us some professional guidance on just how to lay out a train, both its curvatures, the elevations of these, the pitches of them, some of the electrical components, how do all of these function. So he's been incredibly valuable to us. I think his experience goes back quite a few decades, and I'll let him step in to tell you what that experience really is. Dave?
Dave, you're muted.
Yeah, Dave, you're muted.
Oh, how's that? Okay. My name is David Sclavi. I'm the owner of Mercer Locomotive Works. It's in Trenton, New Jersey. I've been involved with this project for about 3 years now. And primarily my experience, or I'm in charge of or here to consult on everything that has to do with the train itself, the track, the safety of the trains, how the trains are operated. And I have nothing to do with the actual construction of the trestles, other than some advice on what to do with those. So I'm here to answer your questions. If you have any questions, fire away.
Okay, I'll open it up to planning board members. So Dave.
Question, sorry, go ahead, Melody.
No, I was just going to say, so you are not involved in the construction of the tracks at all. Is that correct? You are
No,
only.
I am involved in the construction of the actual track, the laying of the track only. Not the grading, that's Mark's department. Not the design of the trestles or anything to do with Robert Murray's design. I will lay the track or be in charge of laying the track with a crew of people, 3 or 4.
Are you the fabricator of the track?
We will be here, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Melody, if I could step in on this too. Dave's expertise is in having had built and participated in the construction of a number of this scale of train in different locations, as well as he's a member of I think at least several different what's called live steam clubs, which are just groups that operate such facilities. So he has an operational understanding of trains, and so we will be using other people to actually construct this, but following some of the information that he's given us into how these things should operate.
That's correct.
Dave, what do you think the greatest challenges are?
I don't see any problem at all building the track. I've done several of these, Answering some of the, well, we've already done that in the last couple of meetings. I watched the height of the trestle, and that's been reduced, so that's a good thing. And I don't see any other problems whatsoever in laying the track. It's pretty straightforward. We make track panels of 10 feet in length at a different location, a shop somewhere. And then they're transported there on a trailer, and then we lay them down. We have to have the ballast in place and so on. And we lay them down, we connect them together, we level them out. And just the basic operation of the train itself, that's it. But there's no really too much something I've done before. It's not a problem at all.
Delise, you had some comments or questions?
Yeah, I was just gonna, I think we talked a little bit about this in another meeting, but just to talk a little bit about like the electric that runs under it, as well as the water and how frequently it needs to be refilled, or anything that he can say about the steam process. And then also I just wanted to get some more feedback about access and maintenance.
Okay. There is a need for electrical that runs along the entire right of way of the track, but it's low voltage. It's only 15 volts. And that's supplied by an outside power supply. And that's only used for signals and for the electrical operation of the switches. So you would push a button and the switch would change from one direction to another. They're also done manually as well. What was the other question you had about maintenance, was it?
Also the steam, like how much volume of water, what's the refill process?
Okay. All right, the steam locomotives, my train, I'll use that as an example, has a 20-gallon tank that's attached to the engine, and I can, that lasts me an hour, 20 gallons of water. And as far as firing it up, you fire those up at a designated space that we will have constructed eventually. It's called the steaming bay, which is elevated a little bit, and we fire the train up there. And then once it's fired up, it's able to go onto the track and run the train or pull the train.
Great. One more question about the electric, and then I'll ask a question about maintenance. So the electric runs the entire track.
Yeah.
What is it just like in conduit, slightly under the surface? Like, how does it get, placed?
Well, the track bed is 8 inches deep. We lay about 4 inches of stone. We put a 1-inch conduit alongside the trench, is 24 inches wide. Then we lay the track in there, and then we ballast over top of the track and over top of the conduit. It's a plastic conduit that runs the entire, and that's for the signal system. There's going to be a signal system for safety. And that electric supplies the signals and the operation of the electrical switches to move from one track to another by pushing a button. Boom.
Yeah, to be add a little more specificity there, the conduit will just follow the line of the track.
Right.
We don't want to cut between loops, and there are enough switches where it's actually economical for us to do it this way, to connect the dots essentially with the electric lines. They are just small 2-inch, maybe even 4-inch conduits that are just underneath the ballast here, because it's not line voltage. We don't have to vary it significantly as you would for typical electrical.
Right.
And that also will run next to the water lines that will go to period. There could be 2 or 3 located about an equidistance away from the train station, the yard where the course of water supply is, just in case that one of these steam engines does happen to start to run out of water out there, they can't get back. They have some access to that. Now that'll just be an irrigation line. That's probably just a 1-inch irrigation conduit line to a spigot, and each winter that will be blown out, so we don't have to bury that deep below the grade either. That'll be placed right underneath the ballast.
That's right. That's right.
I'll let someone, I was gonna ask a question about maintenance, but Craig, you go. I want to make sure everyone gets their questions in.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your chain of thought.
Yeah, I was gonna hand it over anyway.
You had said that these are fired in one location. Does that mean that the train cars themselves do not carry a fuel source, or? Okay, how are they fueled?
Coal. Well, there's three different types. There's coal, there's propane, and there's oil. We choose to start with coal. We could go to propane if we needed to, but I wouldn't recommend the oil. But that's how they're fired. And we carry our own supply. In other words, the engine and the car that behind it, a lot of people call it the coal car, but it's actually called a tender. That has the water and the coal in there, or the other fuel, whatever fuel you're going to use. And that the engine is one unit. And then we couple up the cars. All of the cars, I want to mention this too, all of the cars have air brakes on them, and it's called a fail-safe brake. So if something should happen and the train should come apart, the brakes go on immediately and the train stops right where it come apart. So it's a fail-safe brake, not unlike the ones that are used on the prototype. Air pressure, that's the air pressure turns it off. Okay, get some feedback there. Could I answer the question about could I answer the question that Delise had about the maintenance?
Oh, sure.
And this is something that's important. All of the trains will have a card with the name, number of the engine, the number of the car, the type of car, everything that's built onto the car, all the maintenance, and everything that's done to each car whenever it comes in for maintenance. Like, for example, we check the wheels, we check the brakes, we check the cylinders, and that's all records that we're going to maintain. Secondly, I'm going to write up, part of my job is to write up a manual on the safe operation of the trains, and also give classes on how to operate these trains. Most of the time I'll probably be running them, but other people could run them, and I'm going to train those people on how to do that. I'm also going to have a total manual on the maintenance of the locomotive with pictures and also about possibly video to go with it. So that's the answer to that question. And also the track will have the same type of a maintenance. For instance, that one switch would be a number on it, like number one switch. Okay, today we changed the bolts on the thing or whatever requires to fix, and that'll all be recorded. And that's all for your insurance. So anything that possibly could happen, we say, well, okay, we just checked this 2 weeks ago and this was everything was okay at that point. So that's some of the things that I want to incorporate into the whole project.
Yeah, I'd like to just add one more thing to what David said, because he was describing for you how the steam engines are fueled. Steam engines are just one of the possible type of engines to pull the cars here. Those are very expensive, and they're a little bit more complicated to operate than say an electric engine. So we're going to have a variety of different types of engines. We'll probably start off with about 3, and it may go up to about maybe 5 or 6 eventually, but there'll be of different types of power source. The electric ones, obviously, you can just get on them, turn a switch, and you can go. So there's an advantage to that. The steam ones do require a couple of hours of building up the steam so that you can actually operate. So that's a very different kind of experience. But
well, do they generate a significant amount of smoke?
No, you're talking about a very, very, very small engine here. When you're putting coal into one of these things, you're putting a small handful of coal into the fire.
Yeah, I could answer that. You remember the old metal beach shovel we used to have? That's the kind of shovel we use. So it's like a little tiny shovel and like a handful of coal. And one time, another time I told Howard this story. I was asked that same question, how much smoke they put out, and it was in a public park. And they had a bunch of barbecues out there, and actually the train makes less smoke than the barbecues did. So that gives you some kind of an idea of how much smoke it makes, very little.
Okay.
I have a question for Dave.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Edna.
You mentioned that it was a good thing that they have lowered the height of some of the trestles.
Mhm.
Why was that a good thing?
Well, I just think that being that high up is not as good as it should be. I like the lower, because of the terrain we have, we're forced to use these trestles because we have a certain grade that we have to maintain, a 1.6 at the maximum. So that's why we kind of switched it around and everything. And I like the idea of a lower trestle, just, I think it looks better. It's a little bit more blending in with the surface. If we're going to be making these out of core 10, which is a material that rusts and it turns a brownish color, so it's going to blend in with the scenery, I guess. And we're not going to be painting it, which paint would maybe eventually come off and look kind of crappy. But the steel that I've specified to use on these is what's called a core 10, which rusts a little bit and then it doesn't rust anymore, so it's like a brownish color. And I just like the idea of the lower trestles. I just think they're not as obtrusive looking. They look better. The only reason why I said that.
And you've been around a few of these.
Mhm.
You've been involved with a few of these. What have been the safety issues, if any, in your experience?
The safety issues, that only ones that I know of are how the people are loaded into the cars. Now, we don't intend to have 20 people on this train. It's possible, but we're probably not going to have that many, maybe 1, 2, or 3 people. Secondly, every train will have, of course, an engineer on the engine with a radio, and the guy sitting all the way at the last car with a radio, and it'll be in communication with each other. So if anything happens, he say, "Whoa, Dave, shut the train off." Okay. And we do that. And that's the biggest safety issue that may happen. Something happens, that train goes off the track, wheel derails, which is very unusual. Doesn't happen that often if everything's set up correctly. And that's one of my jobs too, to make sure everything is set correctly. And of course, on the trestles now, we have guardrails. No problem at all, 6 foot wide. Very rarely will the trains derail.
Yeah, and Dave, can you describe what happens when a train derails? Do the cars tip over?
No, they don't tip over. Well, first of all, the way the roadbed is laid out, it's laid out like to grade, I guess. Is that what we would call it?
Yes.
How it
Yeah.
works, to the level of
Yes.
the actual track on each side. It's not up on a mound. And when it derails, it just stays right there. Now, like I mentioned before, the train comes apart, the brakes go on. So it's going to stop right there. It's not going to roll down the hill. It's not going to roll anymore on the track. It's not going to go backwards. It's going to stay right where it stopped. And that's the nice feature about the fail-safe brake, which is exactly like the prototype. Westinghouse developed it in the 1890s. So it's a miniature. I've developed a miniature version of that.
Wonderful. Edna, do you have more questions?
I just have one more question.
Sure.
When I look at the photographs of people on the train, and I look at the adults, and their legs, of course, are all the way down to the track level. What's to prevent somebody's leg from getting stuck, caught? I don't know. Just looks dangerous to me.
Well, the cars that were shown were like a flat type car, which is 15 inches wide, and the track's only 7 inches wide. So there's nothing to catch your foot on under a wheel. I mean, if the trains aren't heavy enough to cut your foot off.
I think what he's saying, Edna, is that the wheels are actually narrower than the width of the vehicle itself. So the sides of the car are 2 or 3 inches out from the wheel, and they're low to the ground. So it's a little bit difficult to actually get your foot.
I want to also mention
all of that.
I want to also mention, Howard, that the type of cars that we're using, you would be sitting in the cars, not over the car like we're shown with a flat car. There'll be a passenger type car where you sit with your legs inside of it. So it's impossible for your legs to come out of it.
Would probably be helpful to see
We may have a picture of it. I don't know.
an image of that. Dave, one thing I wanted to ask is, you talked about training manuals and operational manuals. Do you have examples of those from other installations that you might provide us so that we can see the,
There's
not
one here.
tonight, Dave, not tonight, Dave.
See, I
Not
think-
tonight. But I think it would be very reassuring for people to see the obviously the great detail you go to make this operation safe. So why don't you talk with Mark and Howard and see what examples you could send so we could take a look at those. Other members of the planning board.
Melody, this is Jim. I have a comment.
Sure.
It's for Mark and Howard and Robert. I took a look at the, I guess it's the newly submitted trestle diagrams we had up earlier. Just ask you to take a look at those. The list that was on there showed the highest trestle at 17 feet, but the sketch that's on there showing the highest trestle gets it up to 24 feet. I just want to make sure we are staying under the 20 feet for the accessory use. And if the diagram is wrong, let's just amend the diagram so that the numbers are right for the final submission.
Right.
Just, I think I'm guessing it's an inconsistency because you have said it's under 20.
Yeah,
and I
it
think
is.
it's
It
just
is.
kind of
We're
a cut
definitely under
20 feet,
20 for the height. So
yeah, but if we can
we'll
amend
look
that
for
one to
that.
show it under 20, that would be good. Just so again, there isn't any kind of confusion.
Sure.
I did have a quick question for David. Only was asked, how fast do these go, say at their top speed?
I've asked that question many, many times.
I'm sure.
You either want to know how fast does it go and how much does it weigh? Well, how fast does it go? Probably I know for sure, 8 miles an hour. That's about the maximum. It possibly can go 10, but about 8 miles an hour. Depends on the size of the train wheels, the locomotive wheels. A big wheel will go a little bit faster. A small wheel goes a little bit slower. But for the most part, 8 miles an hour is an average. Most of the time we'll be going 6 and 5, not very fast at all. So if anything should happen, we can almost shut down immediately and stop within a foot or two.
Yeah, that was gonna be my last question, stopping distance. Okay, thank you.
Right. One other thing I would like to add, and a lot of times people don't have the real concept of what these trains are. They're not amusement park trains in the slightest. They're not amusement park trains at all. These trains are scale models of actual trains. Like, for example, somebody comes to me and they want to build a certain type of locomotive that was actually on a prototype railroad. I go out and I get the drawings. I make everything exactly scale as it was in the prototype, just a little smaller. It's 1/8 the size. So if you took 8 trains, put them together that way, 8 trains, put them together that way, and 8 trains high, that's how big the thing would be. So it's 1.5 inches to the foot scale, and they're true scale models of the actual trains that ran on with a particular railroad, the Pennsylvania Railroad, the New York Central Railroad, and so on. So they're not amusement park trains whatsoever.
Thank you,
Amusement Park
Dave.
trains are a different breed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jim, anything else on your list?
No, I think the chief may be on. I don't know, Mark, if you know, is it KI phone or?
I think that's it, Jim. I emailed and texted.
I am here.
Yep.
Hey,
Okay.
all right, I just want to thank Dave. I
Okay,
think
thanks.
this has
You're
been
welcome.
very
Thank you, guys.
helpful.
Pleasure.
This
Okay,
is Kyle.
so,
You hear me?
hi, Kyle. Yes, hello, Chief.
How are you?
How are
So-
you? Thank you for joining us.
Not a problem. I can make this pretty quick if I may, just with actually walking the site and looking at the proposed plan and everything. There is no, which appears any kind of safety issue that's going to hinder us of any kind of rescue work or anything with this project. I wish these projects that we're reviewing here were as easy as, I wish rides coming in Dutchess County Fair were easy as this, or some of the things we run into up to Ferncliff Forest as well, with accessibility and everything. So this is pretty much a walk in the park for us. But as far as the concern about when the trestles are 20 feet high, we can walk up to that on the tracks the way as spoken before, on each side where a handrail is, if we need to remove somebody off, if the train does stop or we need any kind of assistance for a medical emergency. But we walk the whole property, and the property with the equipment that we have with ATVs that are equipped with stretchers. Like I said, it's nothing. This project, like I said, just my opinion is will not hinder any of our operations whatsoever.
And Emma, do I understand that the applicant is also willing to keep an ATV or something on the premises to assist you?
Well,
Is
I
that
mean,
correct?
obviously, we have our own. We wouldn't use an outside ATV. The simple fact is, if there's ever emergency, we always look at large properties like this. Wherever we're going, is that somebody meets us, at least in the beginning, and take us to the location. So we're not trying to, figure this out going through any of the trails that they do have accessibility at. So, which will definitely, I would hope, and usually that falls under the 911 center. If somebody calls in, can you meet EMS or fire personnel at such and such? And then, that information will be relayed. But as far as them having an ATV, we would not need theirs. We have our 4-wheel drives and our ATVs equipment to be able to handle anything.
Okay. Planning board members, do you have any questions of Chief Amy?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Craig.
Okay, yeah. I was just gonna say, would you, Chief, would you recommend some kind of like a final walkthrough, like as the project is nearing completion, any kind of like a, training session that you would have? I mean, does that need to be part of the process?
Obviously with the, when this project is completed, I would definitely, would like to do a walkthrough to make sure, obviously, and not saying that they're not, that all handrails are in place and that we can see where emergency shutoffs are and so forth, or where we can look at where the control room is. So we know we're familiar with anything. So if we need to, assist with any kind of shutdown or so forth, yes, we definitely, as we talked when we did the walk around, to when this is complete, to take a walkthrough. And as I said to him, and take a ride on it.
I would like pictures of that, please.
Not a problem.
Delise.
Maybe it's a new point. I was just going to say that for ATVs to get access, you have the trestle, and just to get a visual for me, is there like a small maintained pathway, I assume, that goes adjacent to the tracks for ATV access?
Yes. They're actually where, and it's kind of where the trestles, where the tracks come on ground level and go up to the trestle. Believe it or not, we could actually, if we had to, which I don't think we do with the way these tracks are built with walkways on each side, our ladder truck can actually get in there and we could extend the ladder to the cars.
Thank you.
Other planning board members? Okay. Thank you, Howard and Mark, for bringing Dave and the chief here tonight. I think it's been very instructive. And with that, unless Dave or the chief have anything more to add, I think we can let them go, and then we can wrap up with Jim where we are with this.
No, I'm all set, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. Any parting words, Dave?
Yeah, just thank you as well. I've been watching a lot of these meetings because I've been involved for now 3 years. We're anxious to get trains running. And by the way, if the chief wants to run the train, I'll show him how to operate it. I'll show you how to operate it, any of you. It's not that hard, and it's a lot of fun. I've been doing it for 53 years.
One last question, and maybe it's part of your manuals. Is there an annual inspection, or, I mean, I know you're inspecting things all the time, but is there a timetable for inspection?
No, because it's a constant ongoing thing. For example, if I'm running along the train and I see something that's a problem, I make a note of it either mentally or on paper. And then the next day or whenever we do the maintenance once a week or whatever it is, we go out and repair it. We do this at our train clubs. I belong to 2 train clubs, the Pennsylvania Live Steamers and the New Jersey Live Steamers. And they're called live steamers because the trains are steam driven. But it's also called outdoor miniature railroading as well. And every Wednesday we have a crew of people go out there and maintain the track and level it and do whatever you need to do to keep it maintenance, keep the maintenance up. So it's important that the track be level. So it can't have any dippity doos and stuff like that.
No dippity doos.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks again, Dave.
You're
And
welcome.
I'll turn it back to Jim. Jim, do you want to summarize where we are? I mean, we're going to be continuing the public hearing, but oh, don't tell me Jim went away. That's not a good thing.
He's there, he's muted.
Oh, no, that's even worse.
Sorry, I'm here. I glitched for a
Okay.
second. Sorry. So what do we need?
Well, I think we're going to continue the public hearing. You want
Yes.
you want to update us on where we are and anything we need to know in order to move forward?
No, I think it's just a continuation motion, right?
Okay. Could I have that?
So moved.
Gretchen, are we continuing this to May 2nd?
That's what they want to do.
Okay. Can I have a motion to continue the public hearing until May 2nd?
So moved, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Edna. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Howard and Mark. I think this was nice tonight. Thanks a lot.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Next up, Thomas Daniels, 8 Slate Dock Road, improvements to the property, site plan and special use permit. I see Mr. Murray here.
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm proud to say that I told Mr. Daniels, I said, we're late on the list, maybe around 8 o'clock, and I have that in writing. So that was pretty good guessing. But I've changed my mind. I'd like to add a miniature train to our site plan. A little smaller, maybe.
All right, I'll take a motion. I'll take a motion right now.
So,
We want that guy from Newark now.
thank you very much to the planning board and the TAB, and actually they're not represented here, but the ZBA also. It's been an active last 4 to 6 weeks. The town has responded. The town engineer has responded to my clients with and to us as applicants with questions about 8 Slate Dock Road. It's a special small property bordering, really sitting on the river essentially, with a steep existing driveway and a tired old house and 2 neighbors who we're trying very much to be considerate of as we plan and take advice and constructive criticism from a number of different sources. So I'd love to report to you on the site visits, our reaction and changes to combined advice from both planning board and ZBA, and hope that you'll find favor and with our efforts and our the owner's desire to build a house with a detached garage. First, I should just go back and summarize. We're looking for, I'm reading, I'm not going to ask you to pull them up, Jim, but I'll just read right from my application. We're looking for 3 variances on this property. The first variance is for the main house. The Rhinecliff Overlay District restricts the size of the house to 2,300 square feet as of right. We would like a house that is 2512, so it's 9% larger than that permitted by as of right. The second 2 variances are for the garage. The first one in some ways is straightforward. We want to put the garage in the front yard. For this particular property with its road frontage, I would say, and I think everyone has heard this a number of times now, there's no other place to put a garage. And then secondly, or second variance, or third altogether, is the variance for the height of the garage. And thank you, Jim, for bringing this up. Maybe even the second rendering would be better. I think I labeled it there as well. The garage is by definition 23 feet 8 inches tall which is 17.5% higher than the 20 feet permitted. I would let you know, though, one of the reasons it's 23'8" is that we moved it to the south and back toward the setback in order to move it out of the way of the neighbor at 4 Slate Dock Road. So as a consequence, the garage floor is actually 4 feet above the natural grade at the back of the garage. We did not and do not propose to change the grade back there to make the building shorter. Instead, the desire is to plant. And during the, let me look at my notes, the planning board visit on March 23rd, it was suggested to us that one, we do plant, and we show a landscaping plan. We in fact, I won't say volunteered, said yes, we can do that. I couldn't have it done. The submission for this meeting was prior to that, so of course you're not looking at it today, but we're still willing to do that if the planning board thinks it's necessary. But I would say, and the owner is here, Tom is here, Tom Daniels is here tonight. I think it's fully their intention to plant along the property line for the benefit of both 4 Slate Dock and 8 Slate Dock to maintain their privacy from each other. So those are the 3 variances. Just to speak to the efforts made, the garage has actually gone through, and I'm going to read just a short description that went into my revised zoning Board of Appeals application. The design and positioning of the garage structure has gone through various iterations to accommodate the neighboring property at 4 Slate Dock Road. Initially, the garage was reduced in width from 25 feet to 22 feet and moved south to minimize the impact to the western views of 4 Slate Dock. Based on the ZBA site visit and the meeting with neighbors, the Barons, thank you for inviting us to your rear deck and to your property to talk and to look at the, let me say, the stakeout and the mock-up and talk about the height. We made, and really Scott from the planning board or from the zoning board, along with another zoning board member, made some pretty simple suggestions / urged us to make changes. And I said, look, I only have 24 hours to get my planning board package in. And they said, great, you should leave now and get started. As a result of that, we did a number of things. We took the exterior stair off and moved it inside the garage so that instead of it being a 22 feet wide garage with a stair on the side, the stair is moved inside. 2, we reduced, because we moved the stair inside, I no longer need to go up a stair and have a certain height to open a door through the side of the building. So I was able to reduce the height of the garage from 24'6" to 24'8", it should say, to 23'8". So now the height of the building I have is a little over 17% over that permitted by zoning. On 3, we moved the building another foot south, and 4, we committed to adjusting or moving the garage even further if it's still functional, like at some point it's too close to the house and you can't move a car around. It was kind of difficult to just do it and pretend it was good. But I think we have done quite a bit, and we hope the neighbors appreciate it. We think the people on site that day did understand our sincerity, and I would say, based on a few people's comment, it didn't seem to be so much the height of the garage as it was just the presence of the garage. If you could maybe go to the first rendering, Jim. This rendering is actually taken from the 2nd floor bathroom window looking west, but it actually still doesn't speak to, we could do a million renderings. If you go down another level to the back porch or to the deck of the pool even, the height of the garage doesn't matter, it's just the presence of the garage. So our moving it south and allowing the view on both sides of the large maple, really, well, that was our effort to try and give back as much as we could. I think we also included, we don't need to see it as a group, but it was submitted as part of the package. We show what we call the direct view from the rear yard of 4 Slate Dock, and then what we called an obtuse view. And we tried to show the percentage of, it would actually have been in a document just prior to that, Jim.
You sent me a lot of documents, Robert. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't try it over. It wasn't my intention to overwhelm you, but maybe it's 13A.
13B.
And while you're looking for it, I wanted to tell the board. So we received the town engineer's report. It was based on some old data, so some of the things we had addressed already, but we did in fact address and comment on every single item and produced, for instance, a steep slope plan, which it would be interesting to see the steep, this is the obtuse view. So we're obtuse, meaning you come out your back door, but you don't look straight out. You turn as you would naturally, I think in this case, and look west toward the 8 Slate Dock Road property. The more dominant clear view for 4 Slate Dock is what we refer to as the primary view, and it does have a unobstructed commanding view of looking north and west, or west and northwest, to over the driveway of 4 Slate Dock. And we've stayed clear of that from the beginning many months ago with the planning board. I think we let you know and the neighbors know that we would not put the garage to the north of the maple tree. It was too far away to be useful, and it blocked what we considered to be a primary view. What did I want to note? There's one other, just to share with you the complexity of the site. We developed, in response to the town engineer, a plan called a steep slope plan. So Jim, it's labeled as number 7 in your packet. By the way, thank you. Many of you have opted for electronic. I applaud you, and it's wonderful. I know this is a lot of documentation, but I've enjoyed supplying it electronically and trying to number them so they're in an order. So the steep slope plan, you can see that the only areas that are not steep are the driveway, even though I think those of you who have been there would say it's a steep driveway. The driveway exceeds 6% slope in some places, but not the 15% that basically is not frowned upon, but prohibited. I think the town likes to see driveways less than 15%, and if it's more than 6%, there's a recommendation that it be paved, I think. In this case, it's an existing driveway. It's one that requires more maintenance than your flat driveway if you have one. But the driveway, I could show you the site plan, but this speaks well to steep slopes. There's just no reasonable way to go there or to develop. So the driveway up to the existing house is really, for a, what's my number? For a 1.36 acre lot, I would suggest that less than 3/4 of an acre are truly developable, and that includes the driveway itself. So we've tried very hard to put, and actually the owners really like putting the new house, the replacement house, in the same place roughly as the one that's there. Part of it is born of just the difficulty of the site and the really wonderful spot that the existing one was originally sited.
Thank you,
So
Robert.
I might ask you, where might you like me to go with presentation or comments or questions?
Well, next I'm going to ask Craig, who was on the site visit, to report his thoughts.
Okay. Well, I concur with what Robert has pointed out as far as the options of buildability. It seems to be just a small a small subset of options for placement for this, just given the topography. It's somewhat of an ambitious proposal for such a small site, and I think that there's an important context to the balance of Rhine Cliff and the context in which this site finds itself, and also I would encourage the applicant to appreciate the natural beauty of the site and what's already there, and try to make abundant use of that, rather than trying to just completely remake everything. But I appreciate the efforts that have been made to this point as far as keeping views open and giving deference to the neighbors.
Thanks, Craig. Michael, you were also on the site visit. Are there any comments you'd like to make?
Okay, I think the one comment I'd like to make, and this is purely an aesthetic comment, there's that unique knoll of rock that the existing house sits on right now, and it adds a certain character to the property. And I think it would have been nice. I realize perhaps for the size of the property, they can't do this. But if they could have somehow incorporated that into the design of the house, preserve it, incorporate it into the design of the house, work with that, I think they'd have an extraordinarily unique structure, unique home. I realize the challenges there of trying to build on that site, and perhaps that's not possible. But I think it's unfortunate because it really is a very unique feature there in Rhine Cliff, and really speaks to why there's no septic or sewage system that works in the hamlet of Rhine Cliff, because it's all rock, and there it is right in front of your face. So, but it is a very challenged site. There's no question.
I'd love
Jim,
to address, do you mind if I address that, or would you like me to wait, Melody?
I'd like you to wait. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like Jim to, I believe you've received, Robert, the comments from the CAB.
Just today, yes.
I believe today, and I'd like to make sure that all planning board members have also seen that those comments came in. You might not have had a chance to look at them yet, but I think they're well crafted and definitely worth taking a look at. Jim, are there any comments you'd like to make before I turn it back to Robert?
I mean, I had a number of technical questions related to the submission. I don't necessarily have to go through the Melody. If we want to move on, I can, Robert will get a copy of my memo, assuming that, we're not talking about approval tonight. I don't know if we are, but I do have some issues with what's been submitted. Robert, the pages you submitted, a lot of these sheets are fine, but we don't have any of the stamp and signature, boxes on them. We don't have your stamp and sign out signature on them, things like that. So, for the engineered sheets, we're going to need the typical information that you did submit, with the first round. There are a number of comments from the CPL letter. I think you did, you provided a response to them. The one that I still don't think has been addressed is the driveway, which you did mention. The driveway exceeds 6% grade, and the code specifically states that that's supposed to be paved with blacktop or oil and stone in order to prevent erosion sediment control, unless a professional engineer through a detailed drainage erosion study plan states the sedimentation will not occur. I don't believe I saw a detailed plan that would permit this to move forward without that being improved. So we have to meet that section of the code. Either it needs to be paved some way, or we need that detailed report. There are a couple of things, I think some paperwork still just needs to be updated with the appropriate numbers, but we can deal with that kind of offline. That's a technical thing. My only other comment, I guess, Melody, is just to make sure that the planning board is comfortable with, the questions from the engineer, CPL, have been adequately addressed, because there were a number of them. I know Robert responded to those, but I want to make sure the planning board is comfortable with them, because there were a number that they addressed.
Okay. Robert, I'll go back to you now.
Thank you. I should say the CAB comment was great, and please read it, and I hope you support us and me. But I would say, I don't know, I think it was a little rough. For instance, one of the comments was that this development is aggressive, and maybe I only received it. I have to pull it up in my email. I just received it today. But there was something about the view from the river and not, they didn't say offensive, but toward conclusion, maybe second paragraph in conclusion. Okay. Well, there are two things here they address here. Maybe Michael, your comment is born of your review of the CAB. On the paragraph shown that begins the new greatly increased in size replacement. I think even if the footprint was double, I don't know that constitutes greatly. I talked about the area of the building being 9% more than that allowed. So I feel like that's a little rough. That's a little rough for CAB to go there. Secondly, he talks about the rocks, the top of the bluff will be obliterated and never be restored. We want to build a house, and actually, I would tell you, I responded to the town engineer by producing a rock demolition plan and even calculated the spoils that might be removed. And I actually think I'm aggressive about my calculations. I think the Daniels will discover that they'll only remove a portion of the rock, and they will in fact leave some exposed and dropping away from their house to the west. So I think the word obliterated is unnecessary and not accurate, but I thought maybe the Daniels would like to put earth down to grow grass, but I kind of think it's a beautiful spot, and they enjoy its rocky outcroppings and things now. But like many houses done, in the last century, if you walked into the basement of the existing cottage that's there, you immediately encounter boulders and things that weren't possible to remove decades ago, or were it was impractical and overly expensive. So what did they do? They built right on top of it, and they didn't use the basement. Like if you go in the basement, you find the water supply and the electric and some cobwebs, and it's damp and nasty because when it rains, the water comes down the rock into the basement. So I don't think it's their intention to obliterate rock and to demolish the site. They love what it is and where it is, and I think they're going to enjoy preserving some of what they can as they go to
Okay.
excavate.
Melody, could I just say one thing? Robert, I don't want to blame the CAB. I haven't read their review yet. By the time it got in, I was already haven't seen that. No, you have to blame me for my comment. It's entirely on me.
Okay, no blame. No blame.
Well, I mean, Jim is showing it. I know it only came in to me today, and it came to the town maybe Friday. But I would encourage, I expect everyone should see it, including the public. One other note there was talked about modernist materials and the inappropriate nature, but in fact, it's wood siding, not unlike probably what's on most of your houses. And if I look around the neighborhood, I see vinyl and aluminum. So I feel like stained wood siding is probably more period acceptable than vinyl siding. Lastly, I just wanted to address the driveway. It's not a new driveway. It's been there for decades. And I think I would say, I didn't want to commit the owner to the planning board or any other entity in the town to redo a driveway that has enjoyed use and occupancy of the property for decades. I think the owner might in fact enjoy paving it, but I didn't want to make it an obligation for him unnecessarily. If the planning board, or maybe Jim, you could speak to that.
Well, Robert, the reason we're talking about this is you're in before the planning board for site plan and special use permit. And when you're in for site plan and special use permit, we have to go back and look at the code and see what the code requires for the purposes of what you're in front of the board for. And that is one of the requirements. You need to meet the code. So it's either got to be paved with oil and stone. You need to give us a report or potentially go to the ZBA and ask for a variance. It's just, it is what it is. It's in the code. So I raised it and our engineer raised it as well. So it just, it needs to be addressed within the
So
statement.
even though we're not changing that driveway, you'd like.
You're updating the site. It's a site plan and special use permit. When you come in for
Okay.
those types of permits, the board is really tasked with looking at the site, whether it's the impact you're having, where the building's going or the access to it or whatever it may be, the trees coming down. The whole site is up for review.
And
certainly the-
please respect that I'm only trying to protect my client and not just say, yes, 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 whatever you guys
We
want.
will
Well, that's-
gladly pave the driveway. We just didn't want to kind of create more angst. So if it's something that we can do as part of this, we'll do that.
Well, you
We're
had
totally
several,
fine.
I think Jim's explained there are some options available to you.
Yeah.
And we don't need to have you resolve the selection of which option you want to pursue tonight. Jim is pointing out that it needs to be addressed.
Got it.
I know you're still before the zoning board of appeals, so we'll be continuing the public hearing tonight, and that gives you time to talk to yourselves about how you want to work that out. I'd like to ask if there are any other planning board members who have any comments or questions at this time.
Melody, I just have one. Is it common that the CAB reports have subjective language in them?
Yes.
Okay.
They're looking at it from their perspective. It is a report to us. It's not binding to us. They're making recommendations and reporting on what they see. So it is up to you to read it and to evaluate it based on your own observations of the property or your own thoughts about the application.
But it is subjective, correct?
Subjective from their perspective, yeah.
I think appropriately so. It's a tough job, but and I think the planning board, if I could say, is depends on them for an opinion, so they can decide what's reasonable and rational. I'm only a little disappointed that we got our CAB visit last August 11th, and I know that there was a shakeup in most of the. I think they're all gone, maybe those board members. But the timing is difficult to awkward. We've done a hell of a lot of work as directed and requested between last August and now. So we'll address it. If anyone has any advice for us directly, we're happy to hear it offline.
Nope, thank you.
Thank you.
I have just a comment.
Yes.
I obviously read the report and was taking in the recommendations about the outcroppings, which I agree are extremely beautiful. So I worked with the sellers before the Daniels purchased the house. And I just thought I would point out that it was a really difficult house to sell, in part because there was extreme amounts of moisture coming in the basement from the outcroppings. And the house, both in its current condition and the size, did not work for most people, most families. So while the land is certainly something that we want to appreciate and work within, our properties need to be functional for the people that live there. And this house was not, over and over again from buyers. So I just thought I would point out what the existing structure, the limitations of it were.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to comment? If not, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to May 2nd, Gretchen?
Yes.
Okay, could I have that motion?
So moved, Melody.
Thank you, Edna. Second? Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the evening, what's left.
Thank you.
That brings us to the last public hearing of the evening. That is Red Wing, 286 White Schoolhouse Road, mining scale and scale house driveway site plan and special use permit. Okay. Who is here this evening?
Hi, Melody. This is Ryan Kelleher, Bonchenik and King were the attorneys for Red Wing. I do not believe Paul Griggs is on today, though. And my client, I think Frank Doherty's on as well.
Okay, are there comments or a presentation you wish to make tonight, Ryan?
Well, because Paul Griggs is here, we do not have any substantive additions to what we've already presented over the last few months. The one comment that I do have is I know the workshop has been mentioned a few different times. I don't believe that's been scheduled, and my client is interested in doing that. My client did reach out, I believe, to Gretchen right after our last meeting to see how we can get that scheduled, and we haven't heard back yet on that. So I guess my one main priority of attending tonight was to see if we can get that workshop scheduled so we can work with all you folks in order to move this along.
Okay. Jim, I'll turn it over to you at this point for comments.
Okay, I have a couple, and I think mainly I was just kind of putting these out there. You all have this in the memo, and Ryan, you'll get a copy of it, from Gretchen after the meeting. We'll send it to you next day or two. Again, as we've done with every meeting, I want to reiterate that it's important that everyone knows the town does not have control over the mining permit itself. That control rests with the state of New York, and the applicant has received approval to mine a portion of the site. What the planning board is looking at are issues that are detailed in the zoning code section 12568 FF, and that is what we have to work within and what we're doing as part of the review here. With that, I've done, some more work on this. There's a lot of material that was submitted. There's a lot going on. And one of the issues that's now come up is that an adjacent mine is actually currently before the planning board for a reapproval of their existing mining permit. And one of the discussions that we had, and now that is before us, is that one of the biggest discussions we've heard, and I think the planning board has heard from the neighbors and discussed is traffic and what will happen with the trucks coming in and out. I believe, and I've talked with some others, including, based on what I've reviewed from the county planning department letter, that given that the Red Wing mine is before us and the adjacent mine is before us, that the planning board should consider and or request that CPL, the town engineer, take a look at this traffic study and any other traffic studies that we do, and essentially provide the planning board with a cumulative traffic impact assessment. So you understand not only what's going on this site, but what's going on next door. There's a lot going on in this area. The county did a safety study at the intersection of White Schoolhouse Road and Slate Quarry. We do have the traffic study from this. We have the other effort going on. So that's one element that I did want to mention that I think the planning board should consider and request. What else? So the county's been contacted. I don't know if we've talked with DOT about anything related to traffic on the other end of White Schoolhouse Road, so we'll check into that. And then the big issue that I did put out there in my memo for the planning board to consider, and this comes right back to the zoning code itself, is that there have been a lot of approval resolutions in the past related to mining operations in the town. They cover a lot of years. They cover new operations, renewals, things like that. And I think I'd characterize that there are a generally consistent set of approval requirements that have come about through pretty much all of those resolutions in the past. And there are certainly some unique ones. I kind of laid them all out. I think there are probably 12 or 13 of them. I do think a number of these will be the elements that we'll be looking at as we move forward and determining if we use this as a basis for moving forward or if anything needs to change a little bit. But generally speaking, they follow exactly what's in the code. The applicant should comply with the New York State DEC permit. It imposes hours of operation. Diligent efforts to reclaim the land. We talk about truck size. The resolutions talk about truck size, what trucks are can access the sites, consideration of the neighborhood, and other details, kind of as they come out of the code. So I encourage you, in addition to having reviewed the code, hopefully by now, to take a look at, what I pulled out of those prior resolutions, that were pulled, so that you can understand what's been discussed in the past. And Melody, with that, I think that kind of summarizes, my thoughts at the moment. I think, we have some more discussion to do on certainly the traffic side of things. And we have,
I just want to clarify, Michael, are you recused from this process?
Yes, I will be speaking as a private citizen.
All right, let the record report that Michael has recused himself. Jim, in regards to your suggestion involving CPL with a coordinated traffic evaluation study, would we want that in the form of a motion tonight?
I think so. And then obviously we'll want to talk with the applicants, about willingness to do that and coordinating that effort. Because that would obviously come with, that additional cost. But I do think it's important that we look at the cumulative impact and consider that.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, John.
That I can talk to Jim about this, but I think that we have to take a look at, the getting seeker started is one of the board's first tasks before them here. And I guess I think what Jim's suggesting is excellent, but I'm thinking about timing and whether it's more appropriate for us to be looking at the substance after the board has done its work on making a determination of significance, because if it's a negative declaration, then maybe the board can go along the path that Jim's describing, or if it's a positive declaration, that may, those traffic impacts may be part and parcel of of an environmental study that would be done pursuant to a POSDEC. So
Okay.
timing wise, we may want to see where the board's going with regard to seeker.
Okay. And John, we did at the beginning of the meeting share with our colleagues our plans for the next meeting and the May meeting in terms of reviewing the seeker process and having going through the part twos. So they're
Okay.
all on board. They're all on board with that.
Melody,
Okay. Yeah,
it's
Jim.
it's probably worth just announcing that again, since we are at the point of discussing Red Wing in case some people weren't on, and I can just do it really quickly. And that is that at the, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And that is at the April 18th meeting, which may or may not be in person, depending on where we are with the governor's orders by then. But we will have we're going to do a seeker overview presentation of the part two, probably 30 to 45 minutes or so. John, I believe, will be leading that as it relates specifically to the Red Wing project and Grassmere. Those are both seeker part two application paperwork elements that we need to work on in the near term. So we'll do that on April 18th, start that overview process and discuss what the part two is and how that relates to this project and the other one. And then on May 2nd, at the beginning of our meeting, we are actually planning to spend the time to go through the part two for both Red Wing and Grassmere, doing both at the same time because they're both kind of at the same point in the process for the seeker process. So just want to put those dates out there for everyone so you're aware of those. Thanks, Melody.
Okay. Ryan, you okay? Okay, then I'll ask planning board members if they wish to make comments now or ask questions, and if not, we'll open it up to the public for comments. Okay, I don't see any hands waving at me, so Jim, I'll turn it back to you to admit the public for comment.
If anyone has a comment, please raise your hand and we'll get to you in the order I see hands raised. Look at the first one is Michael.
Yeah, thank you. I have 2 points I think I'd like to raise. I've sent you written materials on these, so I'm not going to read what I've, because I just 2 things I want to go over quickly. One is the status of the incidental take permit, which DEC issued to Red Wing to allow them to go through the turtle habitat to access White Schoolhouse Road. One of the conditions of granting that ITP, and it's right in the ITP, is that Red Wing has to have an agreement with a land trust of some sort to protect what DEC felt were about a 74-acre area within the habitat of the Blandings turtles, to oversee, monitor, and ensure that the Blandings turtle mitigation plan, DEC said, had to be put into place to allow Red Wing to go through the habitat will indeed happen. The implementation of that conservation easement with the wetland trust has not taken place. It was agreed that the 74 plus acres, whatever it is, would be transferred to the wetland trust. They would then be on a fee simple. They would be in a position to monitor and to manage the site for the benefit of the turtles. That has not taken place. Obviously, members of the planning board, it hasn't taken place because in order to transfer that land, first, it has to be subdivided out of Red Wing's property so that title exists to be transferred. So a major condition of granting that ITP by DEC has not been met. And I believe it's a significant one. And I believe DEC has to rescind that ITP until this issue can be resolved. It's a bit of a mess right now. I think that's characterized by the fact that when Red Wing filed the conservation easement with the Dutchess County Clerk's Office. DEC requires and the county requires that the meets and bounds of the conservation area be clearly delineated in the filing. In what Red Wing filed, it was the meets and bounds of their 231 acre property, which I guess one could then say they're not allowed to do any mining on that property according to the conservation easement they filed. But clearly this has to be cleared up before the planning board can proceed. The second issue I have is that DEC extended the life of mine from the mine down to White Schoolhouse Road. The appellate division decision permits Red Wing to apply for mining permits from DEC for 94 acres, not for the 231 acres. And the majority of this road passes through areas that was not part of that decision, which therefore is strictly under the regulatory authority of the town of Rhinebeck. Therefore, I believe DEC has to rescind that extension of the mine from that land, which is not within the 94 acres. And then it falls to us, to you, to actually go forward and do the necessary study work to see whether you agree that there will be a net conservation benefit to the turtles if that road runs through there. And the conditions of the Blandings Turtle Management Plan that DEC thinks will make a net conservation benefit for the turtles is real. These are two significant issues that I believe need to be resolved before the planning board can go any further in dealing with this application. They really condition what's out there right now on the property as to what your abilities are, what your options are. And I think that before any further action can be taken on this, and I think this is something for John and Kim to look into, these two issues have to be clearly resolved. And I think certainly the one about who's responsible, who has legal authority over the land there to determine what can and can't go there, is clearly in the town. Case law has shown that towns can say no mining on property. Red Wing can apply for a mining permit to DEC for 94 acres, not for 231. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. I see Melissa.
Yes,
Melissa?
that's me. Hi, it's Melissa and Theodore Braggins.
Okay.
And just let me get up to speed here. Hi, thank you.
You've identified yourself. Can you give us
I'm
your?
Theodore Braggins at 8 Ballenbecker Road, Town of Rhinebeck.
Thank you.
And while I am not directly adjacent to the property on White Schoolhouse or Slate Quarry, I do live on Ballenbecker, and probably as the crow flies are very close, probably within a half mile or closer to the mining site. What I wanted to speak to quickly was the issue of noise mitigation, and having lived through a number of sort of years where mining was occurring. It wasn't that it was loud decibel noises at intermittent times. What was troubling was the constant noise, and that some days it would be 7 in the morning to late in the evening. And it's not unlike having a neighbor that is continually mowing or having their chainsaw running or something. While it was off in the distance, it was audible, it was loud. And then finally in the evening or late afternoon, depending on the season, the noise would stop and it would be all of a sudden, oh, whoosh, that noise has just dissipated. So I would like to speak to that issue as that's something that is important to understand. The other issue is one of recreation. White Schoolhouse, Pell's Road, all these places are used for walkers and bicyclers, and the impact from trucks going in and out is something that is of great concern. My late father, Horace J. Braggins, was on the Conservation Advisory Council for a number of years. And in the last iteration, he had written a letter and submitted to the board on this, on the use of the mining for property for mining there. And he was opposed to that. So I just want to put that into the record also. And so those are my concerns. I'm very concerned really in general about how this impacts the greater area and the trucks, White Schoolhouse, Slate Quarry, and actually going east, the other direction, that it will be really not beneficial to the residents in the area or the town of Rhinebeck in general. So that's all I have. Thank you for listening. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we have a switch in Trimble's. It looks like perhaps this is Paula wishing to speak.
Yes, thank you, Melody. Paula Trimble, Slate Quarry Road. I wanted to talk about some topics that I'm concerned about and that I hope that you'll discuss at the workshop. I'm going to send my comments to you, so I'm just going to give you a brief view of the top headings that I have here. I feel the town experts need to do an in-depth habitat study. There's been a big change in activity over the past 15 years at this mine site, and the absence of mining over pretty much the last decade has resulted in an increased opportunity, excuse me, for animals and plants to use this area. The second thing is that the town's experts need to examine whether this subaqueous mine will be a threat to our groundwater and evaluate potential impacts of mining into the groundwater on the local hydrogeologic system. If the planning board gives Red Wing a SUP, this will be the first time there will be subaqueous mining at such a large scale over the recharge area of the aquifer providing water to the eastern side of Rhinebeck. Groundwater from our wells and springs is our only source of household water. We therefore need to make sure our water is protected from the start. Once the groundwater is affected, it will be too late. We need protection, not mitigation. Another topic is the town's expert need to do a safety study on White Schoolhouse Road and its intersections. It is important that the planning board have an objective safety assessment of the town road and its intersections, particularly the intersection with 308 and Slate Quarry Road. Then I had a few questions that I had been thinking about. Has the applicant exhausted alternatives to using White Schoolhouse Road to access the mine? They followed the DEC application process, and that means the applicant and DEC agreed on the Hall Road with the access point on White Schoolhouse Road without consulting the town regarding the appropriateness of increasing heavy vehicle traffic onto White Schoolhouse Road. Another question is, will the planning board specify hours of operation to help mitigate the neighbors' concerns? Another question, how will the planning board ensure conditions they place on approving the application will be followed? Rhinebeck has traditionally relied on the permittees to ensure the historic limits have been met. But members of our neighbors group have expressed concerns that the wheel and cubic yard limits have sometimes been ignored. And finally, can the planning board ensure the easement will provide the protection that it is supposed to? Thank you to the planning board for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Paula. Yvette.
Hi, I'm Yvette Michelle. I live on White Schoolhouse Road, and I just wanted to reiterate that I am a dog walker on the street. I'm a cyclist. I am a jogger. And even with hours of operations, it's still going to be very unsafe during the time that people actually jog, cycle, or walk their dogs. And the noise level, I'm very concerned. I moved here from the city and I love the quietness of White Schoolhouse Road, and I think that'll be majorly disrupted. And that's it.
Thank you, Yvette. Is there
Thank you.
anyone else? Okay, I, for the record, would like to note that,
Melody,
yeah,
just one more hand up.
okay, one more hand.
Oh, two more.
Up, two more hands.
Michael or Paul, I think you were first.
Excuse me. Steve and Patty Lubotsky asked me to read their comments into the record for them since they are not at a place right now that has adequate internet access.
Okay.
To the planning board. Over the last few months, we have written numerous letters expressing our concern with the Red Wing mine. If you read these letters, you know the following facts. One letter had links to numerous medical research papers, and they state dust from the mine and dust from the trucks will cause severe health issues, asthma, COPD, and lung cancer. We also stated that my health, asthma, has already been compromised from living near the Decker mine. Another link states that the noise from the trucks will shorten our lives. Cardiovascular disease and strokes have been proven to increase with the constant noise. As to the volume of trucks, we have quotes from Red Wing made from past meetings that prove their narrative of 20 to 25 trucks a day to be false. They have said we have supplied Yankee Stadium and Yale University. We will be a regional mine. We are the largest supplier of sand and gravel in Dutchess County, and we employ over 50 people and serve 25 municipalities. Does this sound like 20 trucks per day to you? We know that the road itself is too narrow to accommodate these trucks. We know it's not safe. We also know that all of the people who live on White Schoolhouse Road, Hilltop Road, Cedar Lane, and Jardim Court travel north to access the village of Rhinebeck, all 75 homes. We gave you statements from both Janice Potter and Bill Jeffway. Ms. Potter said that she had to sell her home in Elizaville because of the dust, filth, and noise made life in her home of 15 years untenable. Mr. Jeffway stated that because of the danger and noise from the trucks, they had to get the county and state DOT involved because Red Wing seemed unconcerned about correcting issues. Remember, this all happened on county roads, not smaller town roads. The planning board has visited the Red Wing site, but have they spent time visiting White Schoolhouse Road itself? Sit on our porch and have some town of Rhinebeck dump trucks drive in both directions. Do the same at the Slate Quarry Road, White Schoolhouse Road intersection. You will see a problem. We have stated both the uniqueness and historical significance of our property. The house and barns have been dated to at least 1790, first deeded in 1750. The family has owned it for 101 years. The property encompasses both sides of the road. We are a working farm. I cross the road at least 25 to 30 times a day with either a tractor, walking, or in a truck. Pulling in and out of our Christmas tree field will be extremely visible to the north. We all know that an industrial mine of this capacity does not belong on a town road. Our comprehensive plan does not allow for this as well. We also know from past years there is no enforcement of town ordinances. Tri-axles are not allowed, and yet we see them. The New York State DEC has dropped the ball on the entire situation. It is a complete environmental disaster. They have completely ignored all of their own laws pertaining to wetlands, groundwater, endangered species, etc. Blanding's turtles, bird nesting, kettlebush pools, damage to the aquifer, and the related springs that feed the Lansman Kill. Our town is unique. People come from all over because of its beauty and rural character. Allowing an industrial mine will destroy this. In closing, we hope that the board realizes the gravity of their decision should they allow the SUP to go forward. For the good people of White Schoolhouse Road, Rhinebeck residents, and the related tourism industry, this will be a life-altering event. White Schoolhouse Road will be changed forever. And it says, thank you, Steve and Patty Labatsky.
Thank you. Reverend Bowen. You're muted.
No, it's not muted, but can't hear you.
Can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Sarah Bowen. I live at 219 Slate Quarry Road on the corner of White Schoolhouse. I spoke last time. I just wanted to provide a short update about the safety concerns that I have here at this corner. We had 4 accidents since our last meeting, 2 of which caused property damage at our home. So I would just like to attest again to the safety issues that we are seeing right here at the corner already without an increase of trucks. Thank you.
Thank you. Cornelia.
Hi, Cornelia Gallo, 340 Ackerhook Road. I have Lynn Labatsky, 16 Hilltop Road, Ken McPhail, 66 Arnett Road, the Village of Rhinebeck. Lynn lives on Hilltop. The traffic, the noise is a concern. Ken commutes Slate Quarry, the intersection of White Schoolhouse and White School. Slate Quarry and White Schoolhouse cannot sustain 10-wheeler trucks going in and out, 10-wheelers. I travel it quite frequently. So, I mean, we're concerned both the noise and the traffic. At the public hearing that was last face-to-face, the developers were saying that it would be 20 to 25 trucks a day. That's 50 trucks. That's every 9 minutes. So during an 8-hour period, it's just not sustainable on White Schoolhouse Road. So thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to remind everybody because I do feel we're starting to go over, we're starting to make the same comments over and over again. And believe me, they've all been received and they're all being taken seriously. So if you've heard comments about this before, let's see if we can move along a little bit. I believe Ryan was next.
Yes, thank you. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to respond on behalf of Red Wing for all of the comments that we've heard today. We will be putting together a submission that responds to most, if not all of these comments. The one thing I did want to talk about, because I did not bring it up at the last meeting, but Mr. Trimble did bring this up now twice, is the conservation easement. And it's my understanding that Red Wing has filed this conservation easement and also has an agreement with the Wetland Trust. Not only that, but this really is a DEC matter. It's not a town matter. So we find that it's quite irrelevant for this proceeding here today. And again, this will be in our submission that I mentioned earlier, but we think that Mr. Trimble is quite off base with the 94 acres in the road and the 241 acres. That we're not trying to get mining for the whole 241 acres. This road is certainly for the 94 acres and it's within the 94 acres. So that will be further in our submission as well as the workshop that we would like to get scheduled.
Yes, Ryan, we'll get to that. Kara. Kara Keywell.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know who was in control of the video. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to speak on behalf of many of the neighbors on Ackerd Hook and concerned about the Rockledge development in support of the concerns of the neighbors on White Schoolhouse Road, because I think in both instances, we're talking about a question of scale and appropriateness to the community and the community envisioned by the comprehensive plan. And I really appreciate the Reverend Sarah Bowen's update on the situation at the intersection between White Schoolhouse Road and Slate Quarry Road. To me, that begs the question of whose liability is it when one of the mining trucks collides with a passenger vehicle and somebody dies? I think we should be really clear on that. As we move forward, at a minimum, maybe a full red stoplight that goes off a quarter of a mile from the site as trucks approach the intersection or something of that magnitude. But I was just absolutely stunned by the number of accidents that already occur there without the frequency of the mining activity proposed here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? I'd like to point out for the record that certainly I don't believe that I know all the letters that may have come in, but two that I think are of note is a letter that came from the county and a letter that came recently from the school driver assigned to that road. So I believe they've been forwarded to planning board members, and we should note that those public comments have come in as well. Are there members of the planning board who wish to ask questions or make comments at this time?
I have a question. Maybe for Jim and Melody, perhaps, just so that we're clear about what we are our direction here as planning board. when talking about the aquifer, which I know people have mentioned, are these within the range of things that we can ask for studies on, or is that outside of our territory? Also like air pollution and the impact on that, like, are those within things that we can ask for information on?
Well, I think we have John here, and maybe John would like to respond to that question.
I think that we have, or the jurisdiction of the board. I'm not prepared to answer that completely right now because there are some areas that DEC has looked at. We need to pin down, what you're going to have a review here pursuant to the zoning law, and there are certain things under the zoning law that can be considered, but there's also a seeker review which can have a wider scope than the zoning law review. So it's an excellent question, Delise. I hope to have a better answer for you because I know that's a question lots of people are asking at the next meeting when we start talking about how the board's going to move forward in the seeker process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If there are no more comments or questions, I think we can ask for a resolution to continue the public hearing.
So move, Melody.
I would just wanted to ask Ryan one question, or I would ask Jim and others. Are we feeling that we're going to be able to get this workshop done by the next meeting that would be May 2nd? Or do we want to continue the public hearing until the June meeting and make sure we get the workshop in?
I think Red Wing is prepared to get it done before the next meeting. I know Mr. Doherty's on the line. Would you agree with that, Frank, that we can get this done before the next meeting? I mean, obviously it's up to all of the folks, not just us, but it's our intention and our desire that we would like to get moving on that if possible.
Yes, we're ready whenever the board can schedule the meeting.
I would point out that next week is school's spring break, so I don't know if that impacts people's schedules.
What is the
results?
What is the purpose of the workshop meeting that's being discussed?
Well, I know this was something that was mentioned by Jim, I believe, in the very first meeting that we had. And I think it was because there's so many complicated issues and there's so many different concerns that I believe it was Jim's idea, and we agreed that we thought a workshop would be good where it's the planning board as well as Red Wing to sit down and have further discussions about this and moving forward. That was my understanding. Is Jim still on?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not sure if I raised it, but I think the idea, John, was to try and move some of these items along, discuss them in more detail off of the regular agenda because we've got, 4 or 5 new ones in public hearings pretty much every meeting. And so we're thinking we might be able to dig a little deeper into this with a separate workshop for, an hour or two.
Has that need changed at all based on what we hope to do on May 2nd? Or is the May 2nd discussion duplicative of a workshop?
Well, what I was envisioning for May 2nd is a meeting that doesn't involve participation from the applicant.
Okay. That
It would
answers.
just be for the board member, a roundtable for the board members. There'll be plenty to do with going through. I mean, the environmental, the EAF part 2. Certainly, the applicant and any member of the public's welcome to be present. I guess I'm just concerned, with a workshop that it's premature for the planning board to be reaching agreements about where, about this particular application, because I don't think the board knows enough about it yet.
Okay.
John, I was gonna agree with you. I think at the very least, until we sit down and do the part 2 and have those discussions, I think it might be premature, in my opinion, so we can have those more detailed discussions and get through that.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
Okay, so Ryan, it sounds like what we're going to do is go ahead and continue the public hearing until May 2nd, but not not schedule a workshop at this time.
I think the workshop's a good idea, certainly at some point, and I appreciate the applicant's willingness to sit down and talk with the board. I think there's a space for some productive discussions on that point. It's just a question of timing.
Okay,
I'd agree.
comments? All right, could I have a motion to continue the public hearing until May 2nd?
So moved, Elise.
Second, Edna.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Thank you, planning board members, for hanging in for another extensive meeting. So unless there's any new business that I don't know about, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Joe.
Second, Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? All of you getting school break coming up, have fun. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll
Have a
see
good
you all
night.
soon. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Good night.